And I think that our brother just walked in the building. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. So thank you, my brother Zion Lexx, Chief Uzziel of Levy, for that. For answering those questions. So now in the stream, we welcome our brother DivineProspect, also known as Ron Shields on Facebook. Brother Divine, will you care to introduce yourself to the family, Babakusha?
Mute me, Chief. Don't forget to mute me when he's speaking.
Can you hear me?
Hear you loud and clear, my brother.
Okay, awesome. All right. I want to say Shabbat Shalom to the family out there, to the Mishpachah. I'm glad to have been invited by Chief Uzziel from DCB and my brother Zion Lexx to have this discussion on tonight. Definitely want to build on a few points that I heard the brother make. And I want to just set the record straight before we begin. Me and Brother Zion spoke earlier today, and we've every time we spoke, we've always been cordial. We've never had any choice words for each other, anything negative during the course of us knowing each other. And I met the brother online way back in 2014, and in person in 2015. Our chief connection would be Brother Nazi Ashuvel. Who's out here in Atlanta, and he's doing a lot of big things with his Goshen project. That's definitely something we want to support because they're actually building a Hebrew community from scratch, and they're doing an excellent job.
So hold on, you can see me. Is this audio only or is this also video? I'm not sure how we're doing this.
We see you clear and we hear you clear.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay. So I was invited on the show today because me and Brother Zion Lexx, being that we are brothers, we have mutual respect and love for each other. We want to tackle a particular topic or subject matter that has now generated a lot of discussions amongst many in our community. I went on Sinetta TV. It was an impromptu sit down that I had with Brother Garfield. Initially, I wasn't even supposed to be chatting with Brother Garfield, but I wanted to discuss autonomy and health. But Sinetta told me at the last minute that Garfield was coming through, so I said, okay, I agree. And then started off on autonomy, and then we transitioned into the Henotheism topic, and then we went from there. And sharing my perspective on Henotheism, and this is not something that I just recently came across. I mean, I've been teaching this since the beginning of 2015. So we're talking about almost 3 years that I've been sharing this perspective. Once I started to get a little bit more astute in the Hebrew language. And becoming slightly more astute in the Hebrew language, I started to see things a little bit differently because I want to view it from an objective academic perspective to ensure that whatever methodology that I apply to the text, that the results that I yield will be the foundation that I stand on until I come across maybe some further enlightenment. All right, because I don't mind admitting mistakes. I'm a student before I'm a teacher. And this is something that I take wholeheartedly serious when it comes to dealing with the Most High and his people. It's not something that I take for a joke. This is not something that I take and look at as a game. This is not for play. So when the brother mentioned to me, about our disagreement, even though there's a lot of things that me and a brother do agree on, he did take issue with my position on henotheism. And the brother Zion said, Divine, I love you like a brother and everything, but, this doctrine that you're teaching is like kind of dangerous. He said, because people can get the wrong impression if they're not learned and they may not understand the perspective it is that you're trying to share with the family. And in doing so, it can be a gateway for worshiping other deities and doing things that are not uncomely for somebody who identifies as a Hebrew Israelite. In the discourse that I had with the brother, I told him, I said, listen, this type of subject matter is a very sensitive one. It's the way that I derived my conclusion was based on learning the language, being a student of the language, learning the language, and realizing that there were certain things that the language was conveying that I saw that most people were overlooking because they had presuppositions when coming into the text. And one of those presuppositions that I will share is something that I had as well called monotheism, that there is only one God and there's no other deities in existence. There's only one entity that has any degree of power whatsoever. And he is alone by himself. There's no council, there's no other deities, there's no nothing else. And that's pretty much what I was taught coming into the truth, you know. And then I started to do further study, and I went back and looked at the text again from a more objective perspective. And I saw that the text was conveying that there were other deities that exist, other divine entities that exist. The text is also very clear that the Most High, El Elyon, is supreme. He's the creator of all things, and he's supreme over a council of other divine beings who have various roles in the earth. And these divine beings, by virtue, can be sought after if you actually go through the text itself. And you'll see certain things that pop up that typically, if you're not aware of this henotheistic perspective, you know, you wouldn't see before. And, you know, looking at the progression from animism to polytheism, you know, and these are, again, these are terms that are coined by European scholars, right? Our people were not using terms like this to disseminate their worldview. This is something that is fairly recent when we're going to look at the scope of from ancient history into contemporary modern day times. And the important thing to note from that is that we're just extracting the concept, right? And the concept of henotheism is the fact that you have one supreme deity, and the supreme deity can either be the creator, or the supreme deity at some point has rose to prominence, you know, amongst a pantheon of deities, and all other deities bow down and pay homage to this entity. So when we look in the Hebrew Tanakh, as opposed to comparing it to, let's say, Ugarit, or comparing it to the Akkadian cuneiform myths, or the Babylonian Assyrian myths, or even the Kemetic myths from Mizraim, we see, you know, this concept is pervasive in a lot of these ancient civilizations. But the one thing that seemed to be very distinct when it comes to the ancient pre-Exilic Israelite culture was that the creator of all things has asserted himself amongst his creation at all times. We see it all throughout the Tanakh, where he establishes that he is the only governing power that holds all authority, which means that, and there's no other deities that can vie for his position. He cannot be usurped. He cannot be overthrown. You cannot resist his will, because if you do, there's consequences and penalties. You could be destroyed. You know, there's so many things that if you oppose him, that these things will happen. So he is sovereign enough to impose his will on all of creation. And we see that as being eminent. But at the same time, there are other lesser divine beings that are operating in his midst and that are also doing his will. A lot of these beings also govern certain aspects of society. They deal with certain other ethnic groups of people, and they're worshipped by these ethnic groups of people, and they have covenants with these ethnic groups of people. And if you read any of the Near Eastern myths, you'll see that these deities make covenants with other people, and there's conditions to these covenants. So having a covenantal patron deity is not nothing that is brand new. But when we look at our text, the revelation that the ancient Israelites had was very distinct from any other entity that is around them. Okay, now when we look at the term monotheism, monotheism notes that there is only one power. There's no other power in existence but this one power, meaning that this one power governs all the affairs of everything and does everything, whether it's good or bad, and is responsible for everything, whether it's good or bad. He doesn't use any agents to do anything, that he is just single, he is by himself. There's no lesser deities, there's no council, there's no anything like that. So monotheism is very strict in how it adheres to the fact that there's only one power, and everything else is either idol, it's a fake god, it's not real, or if there are agents that do as well, these are not any agents that are encompassing a divine council. Okay, so that's what monotheism teaches. So, and looking at certain texts, and we talking about over 50 to 40 texts, okay? Looking at certain texts, I was able to see like, man, you know what? You know, if monotheism by definition is what we're looking at here in the text, there are some issues that we see here. And these issues can only be reconciled mainly by looking at the language to see if maybe, hey, is there a linguistic mechanical error that we're making here? You know, we have to look at and parse certain elements of the text to say, hey, look, you know, if I'm looking at this here, like, for example, if we see the term bara Elohim, is there a subject verb, is a verb subject object agreement? Are we looking at how do we identify the predicate? If we're going to say that something created something else, is there a direct object marker to point out the accusative? We have to be able to examine these things in the language and be able to see if the language is conveying something to us. How come in number, we don't see bara lined up with Elohim? Is that a grammatical error? Is this talking about a majestic plural? Or is this a collective noun that is working together as a unit? And in English, we have collective nouns. For people who don't know the Hebrew, you have corporation, you have team, you have family, you have company, you have all these other terms that denote and explain to you that a collective noun is one body where you have different offices in this one body. And in this one body, it works collectively to ensure that certain matters are completed, okay? Just like in a Hebrew home, you have the man who is the head of the home, right? And he is complemented by his opposite strength, which is the woman. And then you have the children, which the scripture says that a man is blessed when he has a quiver of them, because they bring forth and they bring on his existence, his legacy, you know, his name, his reputation, and they continue it on. All right. So looking at these things in the text, and I'm saying, man, you know what? Looking at over 50 proof texts, we see all of these examples of a divine counsel. So how do we reconcile this divine counsel thing with monotheism? And that is what I attempted to do. I attempted to harmonize it, and it was giving me problems and it was giving me issues, right? So I did a video yesterday, and again, like I said, Zion Lexx is my brother. Nothing that I'm saying is designed to offend the brother. It may rile him up in a righteous manner so that way we can have a bill, but it's not designed to disrespect him. It's not designed to undermine him. It's not designed to take any food off his plate. All right, because if he teaches anything and it sustains him, this is not designed to do that. This is not designed to belittle, condescend, say, oh, I'm better than the brother don't know what he's talking about. That is not how we deal when we have mutual respect for one another. All right, I appreciate the brother scholarship, and it's necessary in the community because it helps to open the mind up, so that way we can accelerate and stop being stagnant in regards to the things that we're taught each and every day, and every year we hear the same things over and over. There's nothing new, there's nothing fresh, and there's not too many people on the front line that are studied and people who oppose our worldview that are actually diving in to see the things that they study and showing the error in their ways, so that way we can back them off of our community. So I just wanted to lay that out as an introduction, and then hopefully from there I can dialogue with my brother Zion Lexx, because I have a question for him.
Okay, Avdiel, Chief Avdiel, do you want to say something behind it? Divine Prospect, brother Divine said he had a question for you.
Thank you very much. Everybody's on mute.
Divine, can you put your microphone on mute?
Okay, hold on.
And then on mute when you're about ready to speak again. All right, go ahead.
All right. So, Divine, as you probably already know, we already had a room full of people here since 7 o'clock. So we definitely don't want to drag things out too much. We want to be very precise, to the point, keeping in mind it's also Shabbat, right? Plus, we also want to save this for a sit down. Myself and Divine Prospect, we're supposed to have another sit down on Sonnet TV, where we can amicably be in one another's presence and allow people to see that, number one, we are amicable, we are brothers, we're friendly. You know, there's no animosity, there's no hatred. We simply disagree. And we're hoping that this behavior, these mannerisms, this interaction, this as we interface, will serve as a conduit to move the community to see that this is how we should disagree. We're hoping that we can seriously cause our community to be united through differences and to show this is how we air out our grievances amicably. With that being said, Brother Divine, I definitely spent almost a good 40 to 45 minutes defining some of those terms: monotheism, henotheism, polytheism, and getting some of the people in the room involved in it. So I want to say this. DivineProspect is the person who introduced henotheism in our current community. I want to say current because I don't know. I can't speak for any other generation who may have had a male or female who said that in our community among Israelites. I don't know. So I want to say in this diaspora right now, I want to say Divine is pretty much credited with that. With that being said, being that you presented it, Divine, can you, before we get to questions, of which I have a series of 5 questions. We want to limit the questions and not go crazy because remember, it's also Shabbat and we also want to save them. So I have a total of 5 questions for you that I want to ask after we deliberate some of these thoughts. So what I would like for DivineProspect to open back up by doing is to go into some of his proof texts that support it. He's going to go into his proof texts into why he believes that henotheism is there. I'm going to come back and I'm going to rebuttal to those areas, and then we're going to move on to other areas that he chooses. And then at the end of that, we're going to do some question and answers from one another, 5 questions each. And then we also want to take some questions from some of the people in the panel. Is that fair?
Can I unmute my mic and respond, Uzziel?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, we can ask each other questions. I prefer to go back and forth. So if I ask you one, you ask one back. If you ask one, I ask one back. So if you want to,
right.
Yeah,
That'll be for the question period. So, and that's the period that your brother could join in on. But for this period right here, I would like for you to go into one proof text, and then I'll share my rebuttal. Then you'll go into another proof text, and then I share my rebuttal. Is that fair?
Okay, no problem.
Okay. So you can start it off by going to your first proof text for why you believe in henotheism in the Torah.
Okay. All right, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Gotcha. Okay. So the question was, can you show one proof text in regards to henotheism in the text, right? I'll show one, and then I have follow-up ones that tack on to that, but I'll bring one up. So the first one I'll bring up is, I'll go to Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. So I'll wait if everybody's ready, if they get it. Y'all ready? Hello?
We ready. We got it. I'll put it up.
Yes, sir. We can hear you loud and clear, Divine.
Okay, cool. All right, so if you go to Deuteronomy 32, verse 8, if you can scroll down so that people can see it. Okay, there we go. All right, so we have Behel Elo Goim Behapridal Bene Adam Yesav Gebulot Amim Le Mispar Bene Yisrael. So the thing I want to focus on is the last 2 parts, Bene Yisrael, okay? So now we have a situation where El Elyon, the Most High or the highest power, is doing something here. The stage is being set. He's doing something here. And for the record, this particular passage is very unique because it breaks up the monotone of the actual listing in in chapter 32 and what 32 is speaking about. So it's very interesting. And this is something that a lot of scholars was looking at, saying, man, we wonder why this had to be inserted in here. Okay. So when the Most High is doing his work and he is setting up the nations, all right, we have Goyim, he's setting up the nations, he's separating the sons of Adam, he's setting the bounds according to the number of the people, all right. Now we have a situation where it says he's doing this according to the sons of Israel. Now, if anybody's familiar with Emmanuel Tov's work, Emmanuel Tov is one of the best textual critics of the Tanakh. And if people are not familiar with his name, they need to go back and research him and get his books, all right? When we look at the last part, BINAH Yisrael, we see that we have various renderings. We don't just have one rendering for this, right? We have a Dead Sea Scroll rendering. We have a Masoretic text rendering as represented by the Leningrad text. And then we also have a Septuagint rendering. Hold on, give me 1 second. Give me 1 second.
As we wait for brother DivineProspect to come back on.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
I apologize. All right. So it's getting a little loud in my background. All right. So
we know with the Yeladim what they do.
Yeah, exactly, right?
They babies, so can't control
yeah. All right. So there's 3 different renderings. So you have the Dead Sea Scroll rendering. The Dead Sea Scroll rendering gives us BINAH El. Then we have the Masoretic text rendering, and Masoretic text rendering gives us the BINAH Yisrael. But then we also have the Septuagint rendering, and the Septuagint rendering renders as the Council of Angels, okay? And when you translate it back from the Council of Angels into the Hebrew, you're either going to come up with Melachim or you're going to come up with Elohim. Scholars have attributed to Elohim more so than Melachim. And I don't really have the time to really go into that, but I mean, if we have a follow-up discussion, sit down, I can bring them out all the references as to why the general consensus leans more towards Elohim when translating it from the Koine Greek back into the Hebrew. So when we do a deductive analysis and we're looking at the text and we see that there's 3 different renderings because we don't have any autographs, okay? And this is something that's very important to keep in mind. So textual criticism is necessary if we see textual variants to contrast and compare them to see which holds the more original meaning. We have Israel, we have El, and we have Elohim. And doing deductive analysis, you look to see what is the common denominator between all 3 of these renderings from all 3 of these sources. You have El, Israel, and Elohim. If anybody is looking at these 3 words, even if they don't speak Hebrew, you can look at it and say, hey, I see a common denominator, and that common denominator is the word El. Yisrael has El. We also have El, which is El itself, and then we have Elohim. So when they go through the process of deduction, they render it to say, okay, the more original reading is the word El. And over time, depending on the scribe, the time period, the affinities that the scribe had to their writing style, the doctrine that the scribe had held to, over time, depending upon where the area was at, we tend to get different variants, okay? We ended up with Israel dealing with the Masoretic text. We ended up with El, which stayed there with the Dead Sea Scrolls. And then with the Septuagint or the Pentateuch, we get this Elohim rendering from the Greek angels, all right? So why is this important in regards to explaining this concept of henotheism? Well, first, the text is very clear and lets you know that there's a most high power. And the text says nothing that this most high power can be challenged, can be overthrown, whatever. He's responsible for dividing, for separating, and doing things according to a particular protocol. So that is very clear from the text. But when we render the text from the most original rendering, which is BINAH El, we get a situation where, hey, the sons of El, so the people are being carved out and the people are being assigned according to the sons of El. And we see the term BINAH El all throughout the text, right? Or BINAH Elohim all throughout the text. So the most important thing we got to find out to say, who are these sons of El? That the nations and the peoples are being divided, separated, and bounds are being constructed. When we look into this further, we see that boundaries are set in the world. When we go to Bereshit, and we look at Bereshit chapter 10, and we see the table of nations, we see that the peoples are being divided out and separated based on Yefeth, Shem, and Ham. And we see that they're being separated, they're being apportioned here, apportioned there. And if you look at extra biblical texts, you'll see where certain people migrated to, right? For example, Yavan is the Greeks, okay? So we see that people separate, they migrate, they settle in different regions, and they have their territories. When Abraham migrated from Haran all the way to Canaan, we see a situation where the Most High promised that his seed, Zerah, his seed will actually inherit Canaan, okay? But they have to go through 400 years of oppression first, which happened, and they left out the land. And when they went into the land, they drove out the nations that were doing wickedly, and they settled in the land, okay? So now we know when we go to verse 9, and I'll stop here, we see a situation where now we have Yahweh is coming on the scene, and a portion is divvied out for him, and that portion is Yaakov, or Israel. Those are his people. Ammon, those are his people. Those are the ones that he claimed for himself. So now we have a situation where, okay, so if Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh claimed a portion of people for himself, then these other people that are divvied out according to the Ben El, what other powers are over them? Are there other entities that are over them that they are worshiping, that they have covenants with? What is going on here? And the best way to solve this, and I'll end off with this, is looking at comparative cultures. And we see that in the Ugaritic text, which is a form from the language phylum of West Semitic, we go into the Ugaritic tablets and we see Il and Ilu and Ilu. We see these various things in there, and then we start to see a scene being placed out where he has 70 sons, like Yaakov had 70 sons, or not 70 sons, excuse me, 70 children or people came with him when Yosef opened the door for them to come into Mizraim. And then when we look at the Ugaritic text, we see a situation where he has 70 sons. And not only does he have 70 sons, these 70 sons or these 70 offsprings of his are governing various manners in different parts of the known world according to the people of Ugaritic or Rashambra. All right. So that is one text that I will refer to. And there's so many other texts that connect to that text to help actually paint this masterpiece so that we can see that something else is going on here, because not only does Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh have authority and power over Yaakov and over Jacob, but at some point, whether it was temporal or not, other entities were also governing other groups of people.
That's it, Divine?
Yes, because I don't want to take up too much time. And the last thing I want to say is I have my brother Shail Ben Wab on the line. If he can just have 30 seconds or a minute just to introduce himself, and then we can pick up with him later on, if that's okay.
Okay, go ahead, my brother.
Are you okay with that, Zion? I just want to make sure with him too.
That's absolutely fine. That's perfect.
I appreciate that, Aki. Okay, hold on. You got to unmute yourself.
Brother Shael, you got to unmute your mic. We still can't hear you. You got to unmute your mic. I can't unmute it for you. You have to unmute it. You have to find the unmute button on your screen.
Are you on your phone? I think he's on his phone.
Right.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Shalom, brother. Shalom, Akims.
Shalom.
Hey, all right, shalom. Hey, I'm Shael Ben Wab, from Israel and during North Carolina. So definitely it's a blessing, man, talk to you brothers and meet you brothers. So definitely want to enjoy this conversation we can finish building on tonight. So I relate the mic.
Thank you very much, my brother. Right. Brother Zion Lexx. You can mute your microphone again, Aki.
Okay.
Brother Zion Lexx, are you ready to address what Brother DivineProspect just said?
Absolutely. And keeping with the sentiment and the spirit in the room, I want to remind the people that's coming in that this is a brotherly and an amicable dialogue. So we want everyone to be aware of the fact that this is also the Shabbat day. Remember that while we are having differences of opinions and views, the ultimate aim is that we all become edified. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Well, with that being said, yes, I'm familiar with this particular verse. I'm not sure if in any of the videos that our brother DivineProspect shared whether he went into this, although I will admit that his video on Henotheism, I think I missed the last 5 to 7 minutes of it, of which the video was like maybe 45 minutes to an hour long. and I believe I missed the last 7 minutes of it. But I didn't recall him coming here. But I'm actually very glad he came here, because when I sat on Son of the TV, and I shared why I disagreed with our brother Divine on henotheism in the Torah, one of the things that I made crystal clear is that I said, and I think he did a very good job of proving just now, is that the mistake I believe our brother is making is that he continually equates angels with gods. And by gods, me and Divine mean lowercase gods. I know that. Let me be clear on that. So again, I think the mistake that Brother DivineProspect may be making, and I say may be making in this moment because I want to place emphasis on the humility in this dialogue. I don't want to sound authoritative. I don't want to sound like the end all. I want to sound humble. I think one of the reasons why our brother DivineProspect may be wrong or incorrect is that I believe that he keeps equating angels with lowercase gods. And I think he did a better job than I of using a proof text to prove my point. So I'm going to read the very same verse that he reads. I'm going to read it both in the Hebrew as well as the English. And I'm going to give a little explanation on some of the Hebrew there as well. So follow me. Be ha-nechel elyon goyim. Be ha-peru Bnei Adam Yetzev Gebulot Amim Le Mispar Bnei Yisrael. Hallelujah. When the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, he set apart the sons of Adam. He set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel, Bnei Yisrael. I think verse 9 is also very important, and I remember that he actually went here before, because in me remembering that he went here is because of verse 9 that I do recall that he went here. So let me say this. Here's the first believed error, I think, on our brother's part. You see, one thing that I understand very well are the esoteric traditions that go outside of Torah. And it is that area which most causes people to kind of distance their approval of some of my teachings. I'm saying all that to say this. I know when I hear an esoteric tradition when I hear it. So when our brother DivineProspect spoke of the alternate translations of Bnei Yisrael, how the Septuagint may say Elohim, Bnei Elohim, one thing I want to make clear is that if anyone out there knows me personally, but more in particular knows what my library looks like, you know that I own all of the esoteric traditions. And I do mean that quite literally. For those who know, that have been to my home or have seen screenshots of my library, you know I'm not kidding. I own them all. With that being said, not only can I tell you the book that's coming from, I can tell you the time period, I can tell you the rabbi's name. So when we talk about the translation in the Septuagint, which reads Bnei Elohim, or Bnei El, I don't think he said El, Bnei Elohim, the first thing I want to say is this. He's actually giving credence to what I've been saying. The alternate translations that he went to are actually giving credence to what I'm saying. In other words, most Hebrews in the Hebrew community, whether non-Messianic or Messianic, originally believed this verse to refer to angels. I want to even, dare I say, and I would like Divine to correct me if I'm wrong when it's his chance, that even before DivineProspect, in his own words, woke up from monotheism to the realization of henotheism, I want to believe that he also believed that Deuteronomy 32:8 was about angels. But now that he woke up to a more henotheistic way of thinking, he now sees it because of that revelation, as well as the extensive and meticulous nature of his studies. I mean, you have to applaud the idea when a person tells you, listen, when I study scripture, I don't have one book and one translation open. I have multiple. In other words, the brother is telling you that he does something that is one of the most fundamental principles in research. It's called comparative study. So you have to give kudos where kudos is due. But here's the point that I want to make. In him saying that he did that, he said that, when you cross-reference it, you go into the Ugaritic, you go into the Septuagint, you go into the Dead Sea Scrolls, you see that it alternates. And the direction that it alternates that he stopped at was BINAH Elohim. Now, I'm not sure where the next series of thoughts that he expressed came from, but I just want to remind the family that the term BINAH Elohim, as used throughout the entire Bible, is always a reference to angels. For instance, I want to point you to the book of Job, where it speaks about the sons of God who appeared before the Creator. These are angels. And if they were regular gods, just gods, they wouldn't be called BINAH Elohim. They would just be called Elohim. I think that's a very, very, very important point to note. So the heart of what I wanted to say to DivineProspect, I think he did an even greater job of showing by coming here. In that he said that when you do comparative study and you look at various texts, you see that it is not always translated as BINAH Elohim, as BINAH Yisrael, but according to the number of the sons of God, which would be BINAH Elohim. My question and statement is this. First, I'll give the question, then I'll give the statement. How could this verse be a proof text for the existence of other gods when even in his words, the alternate study and comparative text that he's looking at is saying that it's BINAH Elohim, which we all recognize to be a reference to angels, not gods. So it almost sounds as if Brother Divine has a dichotomy between what the Torah calls a malak and what the Torah calls Elohim. Angels are not gods. And while angels are called by several names throughout the Torah, some of which we're going to explore during this dialogue or possibly when we sit down, angels are never called Elohim. They're only and always called BINAH Elohim. And as proof of that, I want to do what our brother Divine did. I want to bring out a verse. So family, walk with us. Let's go to the book of Job. Let's go to Job chapter 1. Excuse me, Job chapter 2. My apologies. And I'm going to read it. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before Yehovah, and Satan came also among them to present themselves before the Lord. So now, here is what I want to say. I don't know any Israelite that has ever interpreted this scenery, be it messianic or non-messianic, as referring to the Creator and a bunch of gods coming to convene before him. I know all Israelites, both messianic and non-messianic, to speak on the idea that BINAH Elohim, or to be meticulous as it's stated in verse 1, as it does say BINAH Ha Elohim, this verse is a reference to angels. We see Satan among them, who we also know is an angel or a malak. So, family, my point is very clear with this. And just because I'm going last, I want the family to be clear on this so that we don't have immature dialogue. The person who goes last and states their point last is not the person who had the greater thing to say. It just so happens that because DivineProspect introduced this to the community, I'm on the interrogative. So the person on the interrogative side will always go last. So because I'm having the last word and ending it here, doesn't mean that what I said just beat or conquered what he said. I want to be very fair. I want people to thoroughly understand that. But this is the point I want to leave us with and then allow our brother to go on somewhere else. The brother said that when you look at Deuteronomy 32:8, and it speaks about the Creator casting lots and Israel becoming the lot of his inheritance, and he went through the lot and he apportioned it according to the number of our text, the children of Israel, B'nai Israel. He says when you do comparative study, you see that it also is spoken of as B'nai Elohim. And I think what our dear brother is missing is something that I actually made crystal clear on Sunday the TV. I said that I think that the mistake our brother may be making is that he continually equates the host of heaven, which we know to be the angelic forces, with lowercase gods. And I'll stop there. Hallelujah.
Thank you very much, brother. Chief Uzziel of Levy. Chief Uzziel of Levy is also Zion Lexx. I'm just used to calling him Uzziel. Zion Lexx is his, you know, his name when he does his presentations and stuff, but I've always known him as Uzziel. So when I say Chief Uzziel ben Levy, I'm talking about our brother Zion Lexx. So brother Divine, do you care to come and present now or ask a question? I'm not sure where you're taking it from here.
Well, according to the format that Zion set up, he said that you know, he would ask a question and then I would rebut. I mean, excuse me, he would ask me a question, I would answer it, he would rebut, and then we will move on to the next question. I mean, there's a lot that I would love to say about what he said, but I mean, I want to honor the protocol that he put forth.
So Zion.
Yeah, let me make a note. We both know, Brother DivineProspect, that because we are both, I want to say, very skilled in scripture and Torah, sometimes if we set it up to where we're going back and forth, we may not get to questions 2, 3, and 4. And because we both have such a lengthy history on Sarnetta, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So what you could do is jot down what you would like to say in response to that, so that when we get to the point of questions and answers, you could bring it up. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
That's fine. All right. Okay, so the question that I have for my brother Zion Lexx.
Hold on, Divine.
What's up?
Question and answers is at the end. What you're doing right now is submitting your proof text for why you believe in henotheism. Then we're gonna do questions.
Oh, I thought we was doing question back and forth. You asked me a question and I asked you a question.
No, I was very clear in that I said I would like you to present your proof text in the plural for why you believe in henotheism. Then I'll respond to it, and then at the end of that, we can both ask each other a series of 5 questions.
Okay. All right. Well, I was prepared to give a text, but that's fine. All right. So the second text that I'll give out, and I'll use this to piggyback off of, tofu back off of what we were just saying, will be the book of Judges. Okay. When we go to the book of Judges, chapter 11, verse 24, we see something very unique happening here. I'll read it in the English and then I'll read it in the Hebrew. The English says, "Do you not possess what Chemosh, your God, gives you to possess? So whatsoever Yahweh or Yahuwah, our Elohim or Eloheinu, has driven out before us, we will possess." So when we go into the Hebrew, is halo it asher yo risekha kemo wos. Excuse me. Elohecha oto tisras we et kal asher choris Yahweh or Yahuwah or Yahweh Eloheinu mitpanenu oto niras. So we have a very unique situation where even it's not Molech, but it's Chemosh that is attributed to the people of Ammon, right? So the people of Ammon, as we know, comes from the loins of Lot and his daughters, okay? And then we have also Moab. And this situation here, the scene opens up, and this is a continuing text, proof text that follows what we see in Deuteronomy chapter 32. And this is explaining to us that Ammon has been given a territory to possess by their deity Chemosh. All right. So the reason why this is very, very important is because if there are no other powers that are out there, and as we see from Deuteronomy chapter 32 and verse 8, we see a situation where El Elyon is divvying out the land, and then he's giving territories to the Ben El or Bene El or Bene Elohim. We have a situation where now Chemosh is giving land to Ammon, the people of Ammon. It's very unique to see how Chemosh has the authority, the power, the rule to give the land to them. And not only give the land to them, the children of Israel are restricted from impeding upon that land, except by the means of war through rules of engagement, which we see that they fight much later on. But prior to that, according to this discussion, it is understood by the subject that the king of Ammon was given a possession by his Eloheka, his God, your God, his God, which is Chemosh. Now, the only way that this could be possible is that there is a being that has the authority to not only claim land that we see Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh do from Deuteronomy 32, verse 8 and 9, but also has the authority to give that land to a people and also secure the boundaries of that land. Hence why when you read the rest of the book of Judges, you see that what the beef was between the children of Israel and the children of Ammon. It was a beef basically about land, about possession, about inheritance. And this is what started the discussion for, first and foremost, the conflict, etc. So that is another proof text that lines up with Devarim chapter 32, verse 8 and 9, that helps us to give more insight that not only did Chemosh, their power, their Eloheka, has given them land to possess, but he also acknowledges that their power, which is Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, has given them the lands around Ammon and the lands that Chemosh has given those people. So again, it starts to become more and more clear that there is another entity that's there that is giving power, authority, land to a group of people that is outside of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. Go ahead, Brother Zion or Uzziel.
Okay, thank you, Brother Divine. Thank you, Brother Divine. So far, family, put a 1 in the room if you like what you're hearing so far from our Brother Divine Prospect, from myself, and from the overall sentiment of the room. Please do share your thoughts. We want to know that the people that are following are enjoying the direction of the dialogue. We want to know that the people feel that the dialogue is headed in a peaceful direction. Please do share, family. With that being said, let me move on now and address it. I'm going to ask Brother Divine to cut in just once more so that I can hear the exact chapter and verse. I didn't want to cut you off as you were speaking, but I didn't hear you say the chapter and verse, and I'm not looking.
Judges, the chapter and verse is Judges chapter 11, verse 20.
Judges 11:20?
24, verse 24.
All right. I want to have it pulled up in my book while I'm talking to you. 11:24. Okay, good. That way I can read it here. All right, thank you. All right, you can mute back your mic, Chief.
Okay,
all right,
no
so
problem.
Here we go. I'm going to reiterate what Brother Divine just read, and I'm going to try to grasp what he was trying to convey and then share my thoughts. So now the God of Israel, verse 23, has dispossessed the Amorites from before his people Israel. And should you possess it? Wilt not you possess that which Chemosh, your God, gives you to possess? So whoever the Lord our God shall drive them out from before us, them we will possess. So what I gather from what Brother Divine Prospect is saying is that if we have a passage in a text which is saying that a deity apportioned land, then surely the deity has to be a real sentient being, living, right? I'm going to beg to differ, but I want to say that that's what he's trying to insinuate. So here's what I want to say. Whenever we're having dialogue, person to person, there's always something that's called implied context. I'm not sure if people even heard the term, but I want you to understand that whenever we're having a conversation, there's something called implied context. Hence, sometimes when you're speaking to a person and you say something that they may misinterpret, you look at them and you say, come on, you know what I mean. The reason why you're doing that from the perspective of dialogues, it's called an implied context. And I'll explain what that means. First and foremost, we understand through the Torah, by now we're already in the book of Judges. So that means we already have the giving of the Torah, right? So if we already have the giving of the Torah, there's some fundamental things that we understand about the Creator, because we also have the Decalogue present, which I'm sure is going to be one of the places that our brother DivineProspect takes us to. So when I say implied context, here's what I'm saying. The Torah is already, and by Torah I mean the 613 commandments, is already replete on the idea of the oneness of the Creator who is God, and there is no other. I want to make that clear. So when the Creator makes the statement, or when the writer is making the statement, will not Chemosh your God give you that to possess? He is not giving life to lowercase God by making that statement. This is from the vantage point of the people who see it as such. So when the Creator says, against the gods of Egypt, I shall mete out judgment, it doesn't mean that the gods of Egypt are real sentient beings. It means that that's what the people call them. In other words, it's called implied context. When I say, let me continue with the vein of using scripture. If the Creator was to go on and say that the gods of the peoples are vain and are nothing, and that is actually what he said, there's actually a verse of the Torah that says the gods of the people are nothing, then clearly that in itself is also telling you that they don't exist, because I know what nothing means. It means zero, non-existence, nothing. And this Torah is replete with the saying, the gods of the people are no gods. That's actually the Torah too. The gods of the peoples are no gods. So now that we have these things in place, I think it's very, very, very important to note that because the Torah speaks of a lowercase God, it doesn't mean that it's giving life to it. We have to understand what's called implied context. And what I mean by implied context is this. I don't want to give too much out because I think Divine is going to go there, but when Divine goes to Exodus chapter 20, and he speaks about the second commandment, you shall have no other gods, I'll then go on to explain what I meant in this instance with implied context. And I'll hand it back over to our brother DivineProspect.
Brother DivineProspect.
Okay. My apologies. All right. All right. So let me just move forward with the next text. I'm just gonna lay a few texts out, and then I guess when I get an opportunity to ask the brother some questions, we can probably get into it a little bit further. All right. Is that how we're gonna do it, Chief Uzziel?
Kane, I think that's what you brothers was Zion.
Yeah, Divine.
You agreed to it.
I think it's fair, Divine. How many proof texts would you like to give, Divine?
No. I mean, I'll give you 5. That's fine. And I have no problem with the rebuttals. I just want to be allowed an opportunity, since the time is getting near the end, where I can actually ask a question as well and get some feedback from you. Okay,
so let's be fair, and let's say do 2 more textual proof to why you believe, and then we could go on as opposed to completing all 5. Is that fair?
Okay, yeah, that's cool. As long as we have the time, I have no problem.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so the next text is one that the brother Zion brought up earlier when he was speaking, and I'm placing this out here because, like I said, since I have 2 more that I'm going to put out, There's plenty more that I want to actually go into, but we can save that for another build. This one will be Tehillim 82:1. All right. Tehillim 82:1, and I'll wait till it's on the screen, and then I'll go from there. Chief Uzziel, if you don't mind putting it up on the screen.
I got you. Give me a second.
Sure, take your time.
Screen share. It's there, my brother.
All right. Okay, so we at verse 1. All right, so I'll read it in English, and then I'll read it in Hebrew. All right, so the text says, God standeth in the congregation of God, in the midst of the judges he judgeth. Right. So I heard the brother Zion Lexx mention that these additional judges, these additional gods, these lowercase g gods, is representative of judges in the earth, right? More particularly the judges that are there in Israel. So in the Hebrew, it's mismor le'asap, Elohim nisab ba'adat el bekereb Elohim yispot. All right. So the thing that we're going to focus in, we have to be able to look at the subject-verb agreement, or verb-subject-object agreement. We have a situation where we're able to identify the actual verb here. And in this case, it's Elohim, the first iterants of Elohim. All right. And then we have the nisab, which is something that he's doing. He stands, right? Now, the interesting thing about this, and looking at the grammar, when we see nisab, we're dealing with an action that the first subject is doing. This is pretty much what the text is opening us up to. But now we have to also be able to identify the object, all right? So when we look at bekereb, bekereb is an indicator that is showing us the object that is coming after it is going to be a result of the preposition pointing towards that object. So that's when we see the second Elohim, right? Now, the interesting thing about this is that when we're rendering this in the same way you see it in English, actually, no, it's different than what you see on the screen because it has God twice, and that is incorrect. Okay, it should not say God twice. What we see, because if it does, it defeats both of our arguments. But in looking at the subject, and the subject itself is being placed in the middle. When we look at bekereb, we have the inseparable preposition in the bekereb. The subject is in the middle of something. So we can't have God and God because you cannot be in the middle of one person, okay? Unless we're talking about other things, but this is not what the text is talking about, right? So we have a situation where the second Elohim that we see is an implied plural because we have one entity that is sitting in the congregation or the council, right, of another group of entities, and he is judging. All right, he judges. Oh, it's the present participle. He judges, right? So we have a situation where he is doing an active participle action, and he is in the middle of other entities. Now, when we look at this, and I wish I had time to go further into this, as we read the text, we're going to see certain indicators in the text that explains to us very clearly that these entities that we're looking at, the second object or the accusative Elohim, is not this. It's not what we think of as people. This is something that has been taught religiously for a long time, because the objective is when you see a proof text like this and you say, wow, could this be one Elohim in the group of another Elohim? And if so, how is that possible? If we're monotheists, it becomes a big issue. When people look at it and say, no, that can't be, because there's only one power. So this has to be people and who we're dealing with, right? So the interesting thing is when we go to Tehillim 82:7, and I'll get this because it's still within the same chapter, and then I'll hand it over to my brother Zion Lexx. We have something very interesting. We have Achen ke'edam te mutun yu ke'achad hasarim tipolu. Now, why is this important? If that initial Elohim in which the supreme Elohim is judging in the middle of are human beings, we will not see a prefix such as kaf, The prefix kaf indicates like or as, and that's a literary device that we see in English, is where you're making comparison between either two like things or two unlike things. And the key here is two unlike things that you're making a comparison with. So in this case, if it were human beings, you would not have this prefix attached because we are talking about humans. They're going to say, well, you're going to die as a man, or you're going to fall as a prince, because this is attributes that people have. There's princes and there's men. But when you add that prefix, right, kaf, we have a situation where we're comparing two unlike things and we're looking at shared attributes. So now the immortality of these judges are now going to be mortal like men. And even though they have prominence as a prince on the earth, that they will also fall like all princes do. Because we know that when we look at a series of consecutive empires, princes and kings are always rising and falling, rising and falling, rising and falling. So the objective of these Elohim, their objective is to ensure that they are imputing a protocol of righteousness in the earth, to ensure that the parts that they're governing, righteousness is kept throughout the land, because if they do not, as a result, there are consequences for them. And for people, if they think that entities that are ethereal or supernatural cannot be destroyed, then we can go into the rest of the text and we can actually talk about that. But I'll leave it at that, as put it on the table, another proof text.
That was excellent. So let me first agree with the brother's last statement, Brother Divine Prospect, in saying that I am very clear on the idea that supernatural entities can be destroyed. As a matter of fact, when you go to Isaiah chapter 24, verse 24, the Creator gives a parable, and he says that before he visits and judges the sons of man, he said, I will visit the host of heaven in heaven. We also know through the books of Daniel's, the later chapter, we know that some of the angelic hosts on high, who are correctly called princes, the word Brother Divine just used in that passage, we know that we see that there are princes, which are really angels that preside over the nations. Princes, but they're actually angels. I've never heard anyone talk about the God or the Elohim Mikael or the Elohim Gabriel. We know that that's the angel Mikael and the angel Gabriel. Again, pointing to the fact that I think that the error our brother Divine Prospect is making is that he continually equates angels with that of gods. Now, let me say this to be extremely fair. Being that I do believe in an esoteric look at Torah, I will admit in this moment something that will give Divine Prospect somewhat credit, because I feel that I have an honor and a duty to speak from a place of the know without hiding anything. I believe, based on my esoteric understanding of this particular psalm, that there's a dichotomy between who and what it pertains to. The psalm begins as a cry out for righteous judgment in the earth, where the Creator is condemning the judges of the earth who are men. Then, by the time you get to verse 6 and 7, we're now actually talking about angels. So I want to be clear on that. And I think that because my brother Divine Prospect is seeing Elohim here as other deities, for me, this again would be another reason why I think that he is continually equating angels with Elohim, which angels have never been called Elohim, because again, we already know that Mikael is known as the angel Mikael and not the Elohim or God Mikael. But let me go to verse 1 and explain what brother Divine Prospect just translated. Mismor le Asaph, a psalm of Asaph. Elohim Nitzav, God, capital G-O-N-D, Nitzav, stands, or he stands. Be'adat, in the congregation or in the assembly. And the next word is El. Let me stop right there for a second. There are three divine names or titles in verse 1 of Psalm 82. Two that repeat itself and one that's unique. Now we heard Brother Divine Prospect continually speak of the heavenly council or the lesser deities with the term Elohim in the plural. We never once ever heard Divine Prospect speak of the heavenly council in the singular as El. But in this verse, it says Elohim, which is the creator, because it says he nitzav be'adat, which even Divine Prospect understands to mean someone presiding over when we speak of standing. That means the person that's heading it. So the first Elohim, even Divine agrees, is God. The next divine title we encounter is not Elohim again, it's El. Divine has yet to show any proof text for any divine council being called El. In fact, all of the proof text that he's shown to substantiate whether or not there's a divine council of deities, he's always shown translations that show Elohim, never El. So I think that this was very, very problematic, I want to say, for our brother to come here, because not only does this not demonstrate his view, but it actually goes against his methodology up until this point. He continually equated the divine council with the Hebrew term Elohim. Anyone who reads Hebrew knows Psalm 82 verse 1 reads, Elohim nitzav be'adat El, not be'adat Elohim, be'adat El. Why did they take the majestic plural off? Remember, family, the majestic plural is talking about the creator. And by majestic plural, we understand that Elohim is not a plural in the sense that he's more than one God. Divine Prospect summed it up so perfectly when he said, as we all already know who know Hebrew, it's a majestic plural. It's made and put there to emphasize the grandeur or majesty of the deity. That's Elohim. Or what I would like to say is Elohim is describing the creator as immeasurable power, intangible. No, you cannot touch it, cannot grasp it. That is the concept behind the majestic plural here. So again, this verse is extremely problematic for our brother Divine Prospect, because up until this point, every text proof that he gave to tell us why Elohim is a divine counsel, and we would want to agree with it because it's also a plural word, he used Elohim. But in Psalm 82, it says that Elohim stands in the council of El in the singular, not Elohim in the plural. So it's not talking about the heavenly council as Divine been defining for us, unless he's going to redefine what he's been saying up until this point. But let me go on to read context, because both myself and Divine Prospect brought out something very, very powerful. I think I was the first to do it, and Divine did it last night. Divine said that it's important that when we have this dissertation that we talk about context, subtext, and pretext. And he said this last night. Everyone knows who watched the Shaka Amos versus Zion Lexx debate. You know that that was one of my catchphrases. I told Shaka Amos that context void of subtext is pretext. So let me convey that in this lesson right now. What Divine Prospect is doing is extremely brilliant yet problematic, because there's areas that I have to tell you that I agree with him, because I do see a dichotomy, just like he does. He agrees that there's a level of the text that is talking about being judged in the earth, the men, but he also believes that there's also a level that's talking about the divine council, which I have to tell you that I agree, but unlike Divine Prospect, I understand the divine council to be consisted of malachim, which in Hebrew would be angels. So make no mistake about it, family. The difference of opinion that we have in is just that. Divine is not evil for his opinion. I'm not evil for my opinion. It's simply just a different opinion. I want the family to thoroughly understand that. But let me go on to substantiate my point now. This is where we get the meat, or the context. Let's read the psalm in full. God stands in the congregation of God. He judges among the judges. How long will you judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? The last time I checked, what lowercase God is judging any man in the scripture? Do we find any example of any lowercase God other than God judging man? No. So who would this obviously be talking about? Judges that live on the earth. but you don't have to believe me. Let's continue to read. Do justice to the poor and the orphan. Vindicate the afflicted and the needy. That also sounds like things that are happening right here on earth. Save the poor and needy. Rescue them from the hand of the wicked. They do not know, nor will they understand. They walk in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I have said you are God, all of you, sons of the Most High. Nevertheless, you shall die like men. Now, here is the thing. It just says, I have said you are God. So everybody's like, come on, Zion Lexx. You just see right here, it says that you are God, you caught. I want everybody to open up Exodus 21 right now. Let me show you something real quick. I want you to understand that Psalm 82 is talking about righteous judgment that needs to be in the earth. The Creator is chastising the wicked judges of the earth. But because you see the term Elohim, you think it must be referring to either angels or a council of deities. I'm going to prove to you beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's talking about judges. Open up Exodus chapter 21. And let's start at verse 5. I'll read it. And if the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free, then his master shall bring him to what? The judges. But in Hebrew, what does verse 6 say? It says, Way higisho Adonai el ha-Elohim. The judges. The judges are called Elohim. Time out. Did I not just say that Psalm 82 is about righteous judgment and the Creator calling for righteous judgment in the earth on behalf of the judges of the earth? We even read the context of the psalm, and we clearly see that it's talking about things happening in the earth involving the children of mankind. Then I bring you to Exodus chapter 21, verse 6, where what the English is calling judges, the Hebrew is clearly telling you Elohim. So I have to ask you, family, if Exodus 21, verse 6 tells you that the judges of the land are called Elohim, I open up Psalm 82, verse 1, and first of all show you that the term Elohim as used there, it says Elohim nitzav be'adat el, not be'adat Elohim. Up until this point, Brother DivineProspect continually said Elohim is the divine counsel. He never once said El. Then he brings us to Psalm 82, where it says El, and it's not talking about Elohim. So I want to be clear when I say that, again, I think Brother DivineProspect, the only difference that we're having is that he's continually equating angels or malakim with lowercase gods, Elohim. And with that, I turn the floor over back to my dear brother DivineProspect.
Okay, awesome. All right, I appreciate that. My brother Zion Lexx, very strong. I love the respect and I love the actual passion that you put forth. Unfortunately, being that this is not a back and forth, there's a lot that I would like to address, but if we have time, I'll just ask my questions. But when we have a sit down, I would love to cross-examine your position on monotheism and also show you comparative cultural texts that will also help to further explain the El concept as well, that we also see in the text. But let me move forward, right? So the next one, verse that I'm gonna go to, the last one I'm gonna go to, and then the brother Zion Lexx has allowed me to ask him a question. And again, I appreciate his decorum and his discipline, and as well as, you know, the brother's a great teacher. You know what I'm saying? Even though I disagree with some things he say, but he's still a great teacher, and we can never take that from him. So if I'm allowed to proceed, I'll give my final proof text, all right? So my final proof text that I'm gonna give is gonna be Shemot chapter 12, verse 12. Shemot, or Exodus chapter 12, verse 12. And also we have a reference to this in Bamidbar 33:4. Okay, it's speaking of a similar thing. All right. So now this text right here is actually, interestingly enough, it lines up with what I was trying to share in regards to Tehillim 82:1. But I'm going to read this verse here so that way we understand what's going on. I'm reading in English, I'm reading in Hebrew, and then the follow-up text for this, and then I'll hand it over to my brother Zion, and then we can move on to the Q&A, right? So in Exodus chapter 12:12, it says, "For I will go through the land of Egypt on that night, and will strike down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both men and beasts, and against all the gods of Egypt, I will execute judgments. I am the Lord." Right? In Hebrew, we have Ve'abarti be'eretz Misraim ba'leila hazeh ve'hikketi kal bokor be'eretz Misraim me'adam ve'ad b'chama u'bekal Elohei Misraim e'eseh sepatim ani Yahuwah or Yahweh, right? So the key things that we want to focus on is this root word asa, which we have for execute, all right, which is very important, and shefet, which is a judgment, all right. These are the root words for what we see there, and e'eseh sepatim, right? So judgments plural, and executing of judgments against who? The Elohei of Misraim, the powers of Misraim. He's executing judgment against the powers of Elohim because he has to show himself mighty for the children of Israel so they can believe and they could be let out, because this in Exodus 12 is leading up to the last and final plague. So to validate my last point, since this is the last proof test I can use, to validate the divine council situation that's going on here and other sentient beings that's existential that can actually have authority or power. When we go to Shemot 7:22, we see a situation where the Nile is afflicted and the fish died, the Nile became foul, nobody could drink it. But in Shemot 7:22, the text says in English, "But the magicians of Misraim or Egypt did the same with their secret arts. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not listen to them as the Lord had said." This is very important to hone in on. "Wa yasu ken hartume Misraim belatehem wa yehezak leb parao velo sama alehem kaaser diber Yahuwah Yahweh Yahuwah." All right. The key thing we want to focus in on is the magicians, Hartom, right? A magician or Hartome, the magicians of Misraim, because you have a possessive construct there, of Misraim, did so with their secrets or their powers or their authorities or their enchantments. They also were able to replicate a plague. Now, how could this be possible if all of the gods are idols and all of the gods don't have any power and authority? The text doesn't say anything about any angel coming to the Egyptians and assisting them and helping them do this. The judgment is running against their power. There's a power that is over Misraim that is identified by the scribe of Shemot. And not only that, we know Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh is going to render judgment against those gods or that power. And not only rendering the judgment against it, those magicians were enhanced in order to replicate these plagues, in order to harden Pharaoh's heart, because in Pharaoh's mind, they're just playing a game. This is not real. Okay, they did that. Well, we can replicate the same. Where are they getting their power from? Apparently, the text tells us that they have powers over them and that those powers will be judged. And that is where these magicians are able to execute their authority on the natural realm supernaturally, because they are being endowed by their powers. But as we will see in the entire context of Exodus, those powers are deities that are not absolute and that they are made to look crazy by our power, Yod He Vav He. So with that, I'll hand it over to my brother Zion Lexx so we can move on to the Q&A.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, brother Divine. Thank you, brother Zion. So now I guess we could get to the next stage of this impromptu presentation, because we just came up with this today. So
Hold on, I got a rebuttal to that, Chief.
okay, no problem. I'm going to give you a second. I just wanted to interject to let you to let everyone know that I'm happy that everything is going well. It's no, this is the way it's supposed to be, rather than when we are on different platforms and we going at each other's heads. This is the way it's supposed to be. This is the way it's supposed to always be done. Even when we have difference of opinions, that we could discuss something, and at the end, if the two parties don't agree, then we agree to disagree, and we still brothers, and we could still move on. Go ahead, Zion.
Thank you very much, Chief. And that was the point of all this. I reached out to DivineProspect and I said to him, listen, man, I intend to go on Son of the TV and speak on your dissertation on Henotheism when you shared it with Garfield, as well as touching on some of the video you made last year. And he knew I was going to do it, but I told him that, the point is that more than pointing out our disagreements, the thing I wanted to focus on more was my decorum and ultimately our decorum. You see, when we have dialogues of this nature, where we come together and voice our differences, like it or not, people form teams. We can't help that as the people who are pushing these ideas and speaking to the people. We can't help that. You're going to have people that like DivineProspect. You're going to have people that don't like Zion Lexx. You're going to have people that don't like DivineProspect and people that like Zion Lexx. You're going to have that. But I think that if anyone here has an iota or a nuance of a genuine heart and spirit, you should understand that there is no teams in this dialogue. This is one nation and one people. I want to tell the people in the non-Messianic family who may lean towards my information more than they lean towards divine, if I've said things during this dialogue that happen to be a little bit more off than what he said, you're to put aside the fact that he's Messianic and listen to him. We need to understand that thoroughly. Right is right and wrong is wrong. We're all Israel. Sometimes your greatest blessing comes in the hand of the person you disagree with the most. God tests you. So I love the fact that the brother's here and that he's voicing his opinion, because I have an opportunity to do something great. Years ago, man, I shouldn't have been here, in my opinion. I don't want to get into my story, but I'm feeling the moment right now because I really love this. We don't see this often, and I'm sorry that in the spirit I'm moved to say that, man. I'm really pleased with the direction that we're going, and I hope that as we enter the Q&A, we continue, man. This is beautiful. So DivineProspect brings us to the 12th verse, where it says, "For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night." Well, let me read it Be'ivrit. We avarti be'eretz Mitzrayim be'layla hazeh we hiti kal be'kor be'eretz Mitzrayim me'adam we'ad ha'hema u'be'kal Elohei Mitzrayim we eseh shoftim ani Yehovah. Hallelujah. All right. So I will pass through the land of Egypt this night. I will strike all the firstborn of the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. Now, as our brother DivineProspect was explaining that verse in detail, and even going on to the verses below it to give you context, which is extremely important, so we're very glad that he did that, I began to open up another verse, because to speak of implied context and to demonstrate it is something else. So I want people at this point to understand something. Once again, when we speak of the Torah is speaking about the gods of Egypt or the gods of the nation, such as Chemosh, as we read earlier in the book of Judges. This is not giving life to the existence of them. So if I say that you and your annoying self, or I think that's a bad example. Let me try to really be on point. I wanna be as some gonna laugh. I want to be meticulous. So I think I should just stick to the script and use the script as the means to which I express what I want to say. So hold on a second. Give me a second. So because the text of the Torah, according to our brother DivineProspect, says, against all the gods of Egypt, I will execute judgment. Here's the first thing you would want to say. Come on, Ak. What you talking about? The Creator is going to be executing judgment against something that doesn't exist? I would say, family, that's not a stupid point. That's not a dumb point. That's not an ill-informed point. As I said earlier, you have to listen to the heart behind what a person is saying, even when you disagree. That's an excellent question and an excellent point. We got to get to the space in this community where we can entertain questions that we disagree with and appreciate the excellence of the question. Because the logic I get, if it is my position that Elohim, as it is used here, lowercase g-o-d-s in English, doesn't exist at all, then Divine is actually making a very good point. And I want to go on record saying that. I hope that's clear. That's an excellent question he asked. If no God exists, why is the book saying against all the gods of Egypt? So basically God is saying against the against the nothings, I'm going to execute judgment? No. We have to understand, family, that the book says the gods of the nations are idols. Let me open you up to the book of Jeremiah chapter 16, verse 9. When we talk about idols, one of the very first times we encounter the term idol is in the book of Exodus, in the Torah, in the giving of the law, where it says, and I'm going off head, I'm not looking at the book because I got my book open to like 2 different places right now. So if I say something wrong, please help me, family. Ani Yehovah Eloheka, Asher Hutzetika, Me Eretz Mitzrayim, Mi Beit Avdim. I am the Lord that God that brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Lo Yiyeh Leka, Elohim Acherim Al Panai. You shall have no other gods before me. Then it says, hold on, let me open it up now, because now I'm starting to forget what it says by heart, which I usually remember. And rather than repeat it wrong, I'm going to open the book to say it correct. I want to be on point. So let me go there real quick. Lo ta'aseh, you shall not make lekah for yourselves. Fesel lekal temuna. That's idols or graven images. Graven images. So when in the commandment that's talking about you shall not have other gods, it goes on to tell you the nature of these gods. They are idols and graven image. All the gods of the nations have a graven image associated with it. Hence why the Torah tells you, gods of gold and gods of silver shall you not make with me. You saw no image. I am an incorporeal being. Remember, he warned us in Deuteronomy 4, you saw nothing. All you did was hear a voice, unlike the gods of the nations. So let me open up the book of Jeremiah, chapter 16 and verse 9. I want you to see something, because then you'll begin to understand why when it says gods here, it's not giving them life. We have to get in the habit of understanding that the Torah is a panoramic text. For those who understand photography, you know how the panoramic lens revolutionized film and cinema, right? You know that linear lens you was using gave you a very limited scope and perspective at what you was looking at. But when you got that panoramic lens, oh man, you was damn near filming in 4K before 4K ever came out. So I want to say this. We have to get in the habit of looking at the Torah as a panoramic text. The Torah is a very deep, profound work. don't think you're looking at any one passage and understanding what it means. I know several of you out there have been in this position where you've looked at passages in the Torah, completely didn't understand it. Then you went to other passages that shed light, or what's called elucidated it. You went back to it and then you said, now I understand it. That's called having a panoramic lens or a panoramic vision. Adopt that when we're reading Torah. So looking at the Torah panoramically and not linearly, I want to say this. And when I say not linearly, I don't want to insinuate that the brother is doing that, but I'm still making a point. I want to be very respectful. Jeremiah chapter 16, verse 19 reads.
19 or 9?
Jeremiah chapter 16, verse 19.
Okay.
Okay. Yehovah, my strength, my stronghold, my refuge in the day of distress. To you nations will come from the ends of the earth, and they will say, it was all falsehood that our ancestors inherited, vanity or futility that has no purpose. Can a man make gods for themselves, which are no gods? Very interesting. Here we have a Torah passage that's speaking about the gods of the nations, or the nations themselves, coming at the appointed time to speak of the fact that all of the gods that they made are nothing. Very, very important. So again, when the verse in the Torah speaks about visiting judgment against the gods of Egypt, you have to first remember this, and Divine knows this very well. You can't name a god in Egypt that doesn't have an image associated with it. Let me say it again. You can't name a god in Kemet that doesn't have an image associated with it. And by image, we're talking about Temuna or Fesel Temuna. We're talking about an idol. An idol is no thing, lifeless, does not exist. And this is the gods of the nations. So simply because the Torah says, against the gods of Egypt, I will execute judgment, that's not giving life to it. Remember what I said earlier, in conversation, there's something called implied context. We know and understand Hebrew culture. The passages that we're bringing you to have already been spoken after the Torah was given. That means it's already implied that the Creator is one, without equal, without partner, and without any other God with him or outside of him. So that's what we mean by implied context. And I think it's very, very important to note and understand that. And I think to further drive the point home, I want to end off with this last point so that we can begin the question and answer, and then have everyone come out and enjoy their Shabbat, which I hope we help to make good. Isaiah chapter 44, verse 8 reads, do not tremble and do not be afraid. Have not I long since announced to you and declared it, and ye are my witnesses? Is there any God besides me? He didn't say, is there any Yehovah besides me? He said, is there any God besides me? But guess what? Better than that, he's going to answer it. Or is there any rock? And here he goes and he answers it. He says, I know not one, or I know of none. Let me give that to you again in case you didn't hear it. Isaiah 44 verse 8 says, do not tremble and do not be afraid. Have I not long since announced to you that you declared it? And you are my witnesses. God is saying you, Israel, are witnesses to the unique oneness of the Creator. When he says, is there any God besides me? That's not general. That's very detailed. Is there any God besides me? He answers it and says, I know not one. Some translations read, I know none. Hallelujah. Let's open it up for question and answer.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you brothers for conducting a very I would say one of the best intellectual back and forth that that I've seen. And at this point, keeping in mind that we're going into our third hour. Brother Divine, I'll open it up for your questions that you have, because I know you have a series of questions that you would like to ask Brother Zion. So at this time, I'll open it up for you, your questions that you could address on Brother Zion.
Okay, no problem. It's not going to be too many given the time, and it's the Shabbat. So, but I do have a few. All right, I have two questions, and if Brother Zion is willing, I would like Shaul Ben Wah. He wanted to ask Brother Zion a question as well, because we're all here to learn. You know, so is that okay with you, Brother Zion? Brother Zion, you there?
Sorry, I was talking while my phone was on mute. I said that's fine, but it would have to be within one of your 5 so as to not make it 6 questions. We want to make it 5 questions because remember, it's already Shabbat. It's 9:44, and we don't want to go too long. So if he's going to join in, he's going to be taking one of your questions. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
All right. So, Brother Zion, the first question I have is I saw your video on Tanetta, and I see you was explaining Bereshit chapter 1 verse 1, and I saw that you had shared something very interesting that I think needs some further elaboration from the audience. All right, so in Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, we're looking at Bereshit bara Elohim et ha-shamayim wa et haaretz. And it starts off with the preposition bait that is connected to Reshit, and that is giving us a setting, all right, which is in the beginning. And then it starts with a third person masculine singular, perfect cow stem tense bara, and then we have Elohim. Now, when we look at the verb bara, in Hebrew, you have a third person masculine singular. So third person would be he, she, they. Masculine will be male. Okay, we'll see that because looking at the suffix, it's missing a as a suffix, missing ot as a suffix, missing im as a suffix, or aim, which is dual plural, as a suffix. We see here that it's also singular, right? And what's interesting in Hebrew, you typically have a situation where the verb agrees with the subject, all right? So in this instance, we have bara translated as he created, okay, past tense. And then we have Elohim. In Hebrew grammar, the verb goes along with the subject, and the subject it succeeds the verb precedes the subject, and then afterwards we're looking for an accusative, all right, or we're looking for some article that is helping us to identify the accusative, which is the object. And in this case, the text is very clear with the direct object marker of it pointing to ha-shamayim, which is a definite article prefix, is the heavens, plural, and where it, and it's the definite or the direct object marker that's pointing to haaretz, the earth or the land, okay? Now, looking at fundamental Hebrew grammar, there's no way that we can insert a subject apart from the subject that the verb precedes to say that he created. It's talking about some separate entity that is creating the Elohim, based on what you said on the Sinetta Black News 102, because there's no object marker that points to the accusative, right? So in between bara and Elohim, we don't have a preposition marker, we don't have a direct object marker, we have no marker there that tells us that the he created is a separate entity that is bringing forth the Elohim. So we automatically know from Hebrew grammar that the Elohim is the subject of the verse, and the he created is the action. And because it's third person masculine singular, perfect tense, cow stem, which is the simple active voice, we know that it is a simple action that is being performed. That's how light it is for the Most High. You can just create things lightly, right? We don't even see the PL stem or intensive. It's just simple cow stem and how it starts off. Can you please show us grammatically how you were able to get the understanding that the he created, which you said was Yod Hey Wav Hey, which is the third person he, created this Elohim council? And also for the audience, can you please elaborate that this has, your understanding of it has nothing to do with the Zohar, chapter volume 1, chapter 15, verse A, where we see it says, with this beginning, the concealed unknown one created the chamber And this chamber is called by the name Elohim. This is the secret of the words, in the beginning, Elohim created. So can you please harmonize that or explain it further so that way the audience has clarification? Because I know that was something that baffled me, and I would just love to see what your perspective is on that act.
Okay, thank you very much. So first and foremost, I want to say this. I have to go on record to say that the commentary that I shared on Sonnetus TV with regard to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, as a means to justify why I disagree with Henotheism, I want to tell you that, number one, it's unique. I want to let you know that I'm standing on my own 2 toes, on my own 10 toes with that. I want to make it clear that I had a lot of questions, even from those in my community, as to the heart of what I was saying. So I don't want people to think that this is the Old Testament brothers' view of Genesis 1. You have to understand that this is Avdiel Ben Levi's view, and this is Zion Lexx's view. This is how I see it. Now, I also told people that I make no apologies for being more of an esoteric thinker when it comes to Torah. In fact, I'm an author of now 5 published books. The first book that I wrote is the most esoteric book that I have. The first book that I wrote represented the bulk of my strength in Torah, which is esoteric understanding of the Torah. So let me go on to say this. Being that Brother DivineProspect wanted to ascertain whether or not I am using the Zohar, which we all know to be an esoteric work, I want to first say this. It's also in the Zohar that you actually find the term B'nai Elohim used in Deuteronomy 32:8. Something that I don't think my brother DivineProspect was aware of. Because had he been aware of that, maybe he would not have asked me to do this right now at this point. So I don't think, with that being said, that he should have a problem with anyone using esoteric information, because when he went earlier to speak about the comparative texts which validate Deuteronomy 32 verse 8, he did say that one of them was B'nai Elohim, but he told you that it was found in these texts, but he didn't actually identify the speaker, which would be Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Very, very important to note, which is the author of the Zohar. Very, very important to note. I was holding on to that nugget just to see what he was going to bring out next. So, you know, when we do dialogues and we trade views, you know, when you're skilled in the art of debating, you know that there's things that you hold on to and you just wait for the moment. This was one of those moments where I knew it perhaps would have came up. He was going to talk about Genesis 1 and my esoteric dissertation on it, which I find a little ironic, seeing that when he spoke of comparative studies, he used an esoteric explanation in Deuteronomy 32:8, because the literal explanation, as the Torah says, is B'nai Yisrael. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and those of the oral tradition, they come in and say no, because this is ultimately talking about the angels. So this is why they say B'nai Elohim, meaning the angels. So I think if our brother DivineProspect was a little bit more versed in the esoteric tradition, he possibly would not have made this particular mistake. But let me now validate why I said that through looking at the syntax. So here's what I want to say. Yes, family, Zion Lexx does look at things in an esoteric way. How do we get in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, to be what Zion Lexx said live on Sonnetus TV? When you translate the first 3 words of the Torah, Bereshit, Bara, and Elohim, Zion Lexx had the audacity to say it means in the beginning he created Elohim. Come on, Zion, you pseudo. In fact, you sound like you supporting what Divine is saying. You sound like the cause of all causes is creating these lesser deities. Or you just sound pseudo. And I'm sure those who dislike Zion Lexx would say the latter. So let me say this, family. I had a great conversation with my brother, Chief Uzziel Ben Levi. And I will reveal, because I don't think he'll be shy or reluctant to admit it, he was the very first person to say, I enjoyed some of what you said on Sunday the TV when you spoke about why you disagree with Henotheism. But I got to tell you, man, what did you mean by in the beginning he created God? Like, we never heard that. We wasn't taught that. Me and Uzziel come from the same set of teachers. He precedes me by almost 5 years of knowing myself. And so he's had even teachers before then, but nonetheless, we both belong to the same school for a number of years. So that means that he knows that this wasn't taught where we're from. So even he questioned me. So then I said to him, I said, I want you to consider this. I said, the first thing I want to do is clarify some things, Chief. I said, I want you to tell me this. The term God, is that a name or is that a title? He said, what you mean? I said, okay. Is the term God the name of God? Like when we ask Muslims, what's the name of God? They say Allah. We say, no, that's just how you say God in Arabic. It's a title. Ah, God is a title. Okay, so is the term God a name or a title? He says title. He get it. He got it. Perfect. All right, so we understood. The term Elohim is a title. It is not a name. The Creator revealed his name. That's the Tetragrammaton. Every other epithet, which is another term for title, that we see in the scriptures, such as El Rakum, El Elyon, El Shaddai, these are all attributes and titles. The Creator has one name. Understand the difference. So when we understand that Elohim is a title, you have to understand that this title is the first thing that had to be created. So before I give you the breakdown, I want to first give you the common sense behind what I said. I said to Chief Uzziel, using a brilliant analogy, I said, consider this. The world is about to be created. Or let's say, for the sake of analogy, you're on a job. This is a brand new job, like the world, like the universe. Nothing like it ever before existed, like the universe. What is the first thing that you do? You know what Chief Uzziel said so fast before I could even repeat it to you? Chief Uzziel, I want you to step in right now and say real quick what you said. Just say that part that you said, and I'm going to come right back in.
I think I said you set up like an office or something like that. You give people what is it? You set up positions or something like that. I said something like that to that effect. I can't remember the conversation.
All right. There you go. You said, and I want to quote you verbatim.
Right.
You said the first thing you do is you create positions.
Right. Create positions. Right.
Which in an office setting, that means you create what? Titles. Anyone who ever worked in an office in a completely new and innovative type of workspace. For instance, I used to work for a company in Chesapeake, Virginia, which had satellite offices here in New York City called AOW. It was an armored vehicle where we went around melting gold in an armored vehicle, where we would go to the Diamond District, blah, 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 and melt gold. The owner of it is Chris Noyes. You can find him on YouTube, CHRISNOYES. I don't want to give you my full name, but he knows my face, so I work there, AOW. The titles in there was really weird to me. So I said to Chris, I said, what's some of these titles y'all got? He said, there's no job like this. Nobody's melting gold on an armored truck, so we literally had to create positions and create titles. I said, oh. I understood that perfectly because I understand Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 perfectly. The term Elohim applies to creation. Follow me, family. It may be deep, but I don't think that anyone in this room is so shallow that we can't dig deep. I don't want to take that credit away from you. I think you can get it. So I'm going to take the means to give you my take on it. Follow me if you dare. The term Elohim is only significant and relative to the creation. But prior to creation, when the cause of all causes solely existed, which would be the Tetragrammaton Yod He Vav He, which is the deity, what would you call him? Because the term Elohim is creative force and powers. but nothing isn't created yet. So would that title exist? No. Would that position exist? No. So the very first thing created was the title and position called Elohim, which also means, for those who follow the usage, remember I just took you to Judges chapter 21 verse 6, where we see that Elohim is used for judge. Also, we know that there's so many places in the Torah where the creator is called not just Yehovah Sephaot, which means Lord of hosts, but there's actually places in the Torah where the creator is visiting man in terms of judgment, judging man, where he's called Elohim Zevaot. And those who really read Torah in Hebrew, already a light bulb shined in your head and you say, that's right. I do remember the book of Ezekiel and Jeremiah especially, and the minor prophets. It doesn't say Lord of hosts all the times. It says God of hosts. That term Elohim, where the creator is acting as a judge. So I have a question again. If the term Elohim means a creative power or a creative force and a moral and ethic judge, of what relevance would this title or attribute carry before all things are created and made? Surely the creator himself don't need to be judged. Surely the creator himself don't need to have a guide of moral and ethics. He's perfect. And nothing was created before the beginning. So again, I ask you, how would the concept or title Elohim precede creation? No, family. The concept and title Elohim is the very first thing created, which is why I said when you look at this passage esoterically, I never said literally. When you look at this passage esoterically, you'll understand the deepest meaning of it. Now, DivineProspect wants me to do something that would rob the esoteric structure, because we know when we apply grammatic syntax, which in this case is the vowel placement, the nekudot or the diacritic marks, the object, the accusative, the noun, the verbs, which basically all of those occur with letter placement or grammatic markers. I want to speak in a language that people can understand also, so I'm not going to be too technical. The aim of an educated orator is not to sound smart, but to behave smart. Always speak in a language people will understand. They'll respect you more for it. So I hope that the language that I'm using, you can grasp, because I want you to get it. I want, if your children are listening to this, I want them to get it. So I'm not going to use high nuances of grammatical language and syntax that may rob you of the understanding I'm trying to share and give to you. I want everyone to be on the same level. So follow me, family, when I do this. The term Elohim is just a title. It is not a separate entity from Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Remember, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh is Elohim, but that is a title of his. Oh, this is confusing, Zion. Why is it so confusing? Because my name in the community is Zion, but my children call me Abba. Abba is my title, but my name is Zion. Does that kind of make sense now? So when our brother DivineProspect wants, bring out all the grammatical markers, listen. What our brother, I don't want to say is forgetting. I want to say may forgetting. I want to be very, very cordial. I think we're doing so well. I don't want to lose the momentum and the energy in the room and turn it around. So I want to be very careful with my words. I think what our brother may be forgetting is that the original Torah has no nekudot, which is what is giving the text grammatical and syntactical structure. And it is when we remove vowels that the nuance of meanings occur. So let me repeat the most important point of what I just said. The esoteric meanings can be seen when vowel placement is not there. But here is the most important part. The original Torah scrolls have no vowel placement. As Brother DivineProspect knows, vowel placement doesn't come until the Masoretic scribes. So before there's vowel placement, Brother DivineProspect also knows there's several different ways this text can be read. Let's educate the people on the whole truth and not the half. Hallelujah. And so now I get to ask our brother a question. The question that I want to ask my brother DivineProspect shouldn't be too hard. It should be somewhat simple for the brother. The question that I have for Brother Divine Prospect is, I would like for him to open up Isaiah 45, verse 5. And I would like for Divine Prospect to prove to us why this verse is not negating henotheism and why it's actually disproving monotheism, as he says. And I'll hand it over to our brother.
All right, thank you. Is that okay for me to proceed, Chief Uzziel?
Absolutely, my brother. Proceed how you would like.
All right, thank you. I do appreciate my brother Zion Lexx giving that very thorough input. I have to say, I have not heard the way he put it anywhere before. I've heard things similar, but the way he formulated it was really interesting. And I would love for him to give me additional insight on that. And that's why, you know, he is necessary to the community, because he adds an additional element that opens up your mind to consider other things. So I'm gonna go ahead and look at the verse he gave me. But what I want to say is, even if we do remove the nukud and nukudot, you can still be able to identify things such as the verb, the subject, and the object, right? And we would know that even looking at bara, we can tell that it's either going to be a kal or pl stem. And even if that's the case, the context will help us to give us more information as far as what's going on in the text. But like he did say, the earliest ones did not have the nukudot, so sometimes it's difficult in order to figure certain things out. And the Masoretes had actually helped modern day people who are not been raised with the Hebrew without the Nikudot to actually understand what's going on in text. So I do give him credit for that, and he's correct on some of those points. Looking at Isaiah 45 and 5, I actually addressed this yesterday, and this was an excellent proof text that my brother Zion Lexx brought out, because it shows me that he's thinking, right? He showed me that he's analyzing, and he's saying, hey, look, if this brother is saying this, then how can he deal with this text? How is this possible, right? So let me go ahead and answer that for him. Like he said, it shouldn't be too difficult, and it's not. So I'm going to just keep it simple, and then we'll move forward, all right? So Isaiah chapter 45, verse 5. So I'll read what our brother Chief Uzziel has on the screen, all right? It says, I am the Lord, and there is none else. Beside me, there is no God. I have girded thee, though thou hast not known me. All right. So when we go to Isaiah chapter 45, verse 1, and Chief Uzziel, you can scroll up. Okay. We're going to get the context to see who's the speaker and who's the audience. Okay. And what is the context of the discussion? So it says, thus saith the Lord to his anointed, his Mashiach, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue the Goyim, the nations before him, to loose the loins of the Melachim, to open the doors before him, and that the gates may not be shut. Okay, so now we have a context that the Most High has chosen Cyrus to commence something at this point in history. All right, the Israelites now have fallen into a sunken place, and now all the captors who are dealing with Israel have to be very careful, because they are the possession of Yah, whether they're obedient or disobedient, because he's always going to preserve a remnant. So now, once the temporary custody of Israel is placed under the, I would say, the captivity of the Persians, now we have a situation where now the Most High is speaking to these captors and saying to them, listen, I'm giving the authority in this instance because you're dealing with my people to do this and to do that, because you're dealing with my people, right? I have possession of them, as we see in Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 8. But as we scroll through, the conversation that commences, and a very important one, is Isaiah chapter 45, verse 4. And it said, for the sake of Yaakov, my servant, and Israel, mine elect, I have called thee by thy name. I have surnamed thee, though thou hast not known me. So what is this saying? This goes back to Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 8, where it was apportioned to Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh for Jacob and his seed to be his portion to grant them an inheritance. So now we know context. We know the patron deity is now making it clear that Jacob is mine. Israel is mine. Why? Because it has been given to me, as we see within the context of Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 8 and 9. So as we go down further, being that he covenanted with Israel and Israel agreed, even though they broke the covenant, we go to verse 5 and it says, I am the Lord and there is none else. Beside me, there is no God. I have girded thee. Remember, thee, he's directing you who he's talking to. Who's he talking to? The children of Israel. This is very clear. We have to understand this. He says, though thou hast not known me, I've still girded you. Now, when we look at this text in the Hebrew, it says, Ani, Yahuwah, Yahweh, 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 We'en od, Zulati, en Elohim, A'azeraka, Welo, Yedatani. The key thing we want to focus on is Zulata, excuse me, Zulati, sorry. And when we look at Zulati, we have to be able to determine when you're talking about beside, in, there's no power. Beside him, there's no power. Well, why is that the case? Because there was no other entity that covenanted with Israel but Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. So there's not going to be any other power that's going to be able to govern Israel because they don't have any authority to do so. They're out of their jurisdiction. And when the children of Israel step outside of their covenant with Yah and try to follow the other nations, guess what? Those other nations becomes deaf, mute, and blind, and they cannot help you. Just like we see in regards to the prophets of Baal and those prophets who came against our boy Elijah, and they could not prevail against them. Why? Because the Israelites that were going and whoring after these other deities, the deities cannot speak on their behalf or do anything because they do not have a covenant with them. They are out of their jurisdiction. So there's not going to be any other power that's side by side. It's like when we go to Shemot chapter 20 and we see where he says, do not put any other powers before my face, meaning that I should not be able to see anything near me. Why? Because there's no other power that has brought you out of Misraim but me. So there's not going to be any deities beside him, but this is not saying anything about any deities being beneath him or under him, or he's out or upon. This is very, very important. So again, this context here does not disprove Henotheism. Actually, it helps to support it because it lets us know that it goes with Deuteronomy chapter 32 and verse 9, where Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, as we see within Isaiah 45, is the one who has covenanted with Israel, who's been given them as an inheritance. And because of such, he's the only power that has authority over them. No other entity can do so.
Brother Divine, this is Chief Uzziel. I got one question, right? Now, like I questioned Zion about the Bereshi bara Elohim, like he already pointed out, and I questioned them on that because that wasn't something that's not something that I understand or that I would teach, right? So just on this, on verse 5. You said, besides me, there is no God, and you reference that to him just being the God of Israel, Yehovah being the God of Israel. But it says, Ani Yehovah we'ein od. There is none else. That's like a definite statement. You understand what I'm saying? There is none else. And then he goes on and said, beside me, there is no God. So what would you say about that? I'm just interject. That's the only thing I'm going to interject on because I'm looking at the Hebrew and I'm looking at the English, and when I see we'ein, Ani Yehovah we'ein od, and there is none else. How will you explain that?
All right, cool.
Hold on 1 second. Sorry. I want to clarify something. I want to be so fair. I love this dialogue. We want to be able to have our brother Divine come back. I want to be able to go on his show, so I want to make sure we keep a very powerful decorum. Brother Divine, because Chief Uzziel injected, I now have a total of 3 questions left as opposed to 4. He just took one of my questions. Also, after you explain this, I'm going to allow you to go again, just to be fair. All right, go ahead.
Okay, no problem. I appreciate that, my brother Zion. So I wanna address his inquiry that he made in regards to Yeshaya 45:5. So he says, "We'ain od and none else." What other power is like Yahuwah or Yehovah? There's no other power like him. There's no other entity that can claim that they are him. He's the only one that can hold that title. He that exists, the self-existent one, the one that has always been here, that nobody can impede upon. He will always exist because the Yod prefix is third person masculine imperfect, which means it will always continue. Hava being a root, meaning existence, or to be a stative. So there's no other entity that is going to be like him. You can't compare him to no other entity. And simply because he took that covenant name when he made that covenant with Israel. El Shaddai made the covenant with the patriarch of the forefathers, but Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh is the form in which he made a covenant. He said, I surnamed you. You have my name. It should be Yisrael ben Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. I've surnamed you. You are my possession. There's no other entity like me because I'm the only one. He expresses it in Shemot. The only one that has brought you out of Egypt with a mighty hand. So there's no other entity like him. That's not saying that there's no other entity, period. And remember, the audience, who is being spoken to? The children of Israel is being addressed. So he has to assert himself to the children because they've been whoring like an unfaithful wife. So he's saying to them, I'm the one that has a covenant with you. I have the paperwork. That's like if a man is married and he has a wife, and the wife leaves outside of him to go after another man, that other man cannot be her husband because she has covenanted with her husband. He's the only one that can lay claim, like, I'm the only husband for you. Why? Because the ketubah says so. I have a contract. So I don't care how many men outside of me you go and lay with, they will never be your husband because on paper, legally, according to our culture, you are mine. That's how we operate. And so the Most High is saying the same thing to the children of Israel. You've been an unfaithful bride. You've been doing A, B, and C, but I'm here to let you know, because remember, they're falling at this state. They're not in their prime at this state. I need Yahuwah. I'm me. There's none else. That's it. What other entity can you lay claim to say brought you out of Egypt? What other entity you can lay claim to say has sustained you in the wilderness? What other entity that gave you victory when you went into the land of Canaan? No other entity has done so. So Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh cannot be compared to any other entity with regards to the children of Israel. So then he goes on to emphasize it and say, besides me, there's no powers. And there isn't any. And we all can agree with that. But this does not say anything beside the fact that there's no lesser deities beneath him. Beside him, again, if I was polytheistic, I would say, oh no, man, this hurts my argument because there's other equal gods, but I don't teach that. So therefore, this does not nullify the henotheistic claim. So with that, because the interjection from my brother Chief Uzziel and the permission from my brother Zion, I would like to ask one more question. And then I guess I'll let Zion ask a follow-up question and we can just start to wrap up if that's okay with you.
Divine,
yes, sir.
Would you mind, just before you go, and this is not me interject, just before you go, for the sake of clarity, can you define for us what Zulati means? How are you translating Zulati?
How am I translating it?
Yeah.
Well, some places render it as only. But there's more instances where it's better translated as beside, because the essence that we get of it, it's a feminine now. It's also could be a preposition or a conjunction, depending upon what the context is. But it's in a construct form when we're looking at it here. So being that it's a preposition, I'm translating it as besides, right? Because we're seeing a participle that's in motion, besides. Or it could be with, just like the bait can be a preposition with. A preposition can also be something that is alongside something because it is sharing in the action that is occurring. So that's what I mean. That's why I translate it as beside. I know some other translation may say only or except for, but we don't see key there. But I translate it as a preposition, meaning beside.
Okay, that's perfect, man. Thank you very, very much. When I do respond, I'm gonna respond to this first, then your question.
Sure, no problem. All right, so I'm going to give my question over to my brother Shail, because he wants to ask Brother Zion a question. I know Brother Zion is more than equipped, to answer whatever comes his way. That's what I respect about him. I mean, he's no coward. You want to talk about no cowards? That's my brother Zion Lexx. You feel what I'm saying? So I'm gonna give the floor to Yael, but before he asks his question, or he can ask it, and then I know the brother Zion wants to respond, so I must be follow protocol as he has laid out and allow him to respond to my statement on Isaiah 45:5. So, Brother Shail, you can ask your question. I think the brother Zion he's gonna address what I said, and then he's gonna answer your question.
All right, Shalom. Hey, Brother Zion. Now you say in Genesis 1 that's your interpretation of Bereshit chapter 1, correct? Of he created?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I want to know. Okay. I'm good.
Okay, so Zion, I guess you have the floor now to address what I said.
Thank you very much. So let me say this. DivineProspect, let me say this. Hold on. So I remember when I watched correct me if I'm wrong as I'm saying this, all right, Brother Divine, because I want to be very, very careful. You are the real deal, brother, and I don't want to misrepresent you. So if I say something you didn't said, you can definitely come in and stop me, okay? I believe it was from your live stream last night, or when you were with our brother Brian Gaither, your friendly lawyer. Shout out to my brother Brian Gaither. I believe you said that the problem that those who hold the monotheistic view is having with Isaiah 45:5, you said that it's in the translation of Zulati. Would I be correct in saying that?
That's correct, and that's based on what the previous question you just asked me.
Okay, good. All right, so let me say this. This is such a good dialogue that it really might lead up to a nice, thorough sit down where, we could really go into more sources. We could morph into syntax and grammar and get to show you that, listen, when we both get up here and demonstrate our understanding of Tanakh, I hope everyone in the room is clear on the idea that, listen, we are both reading, we are both interpreting. No one is behaving pseudo. We are both doing the best of our jobs and the best of our ability, and that's more than a lot of people in the community do, and hence possibly why people do regard us in the way that we do. So make no mistake about it, I don't think the differences are minor, as I want to say, still pay attention to the fact that it's minor. It is, because we are having a difference of a view, but if we allow one another to really see our vantage point, we may reach one another. I thoroughly believe that. I thoroughly believe that we can reach one another. I don't think that Brother DivineProspect will not change with new information when it's true. And I can tell you, family, I'm known for this. When the information is real and true, I'm switching up. Because the Torah says, the righteous man changeth what? Every day. The righteous changeth every day, which means you're growing and you're evolving. I hope people are paying attention to that. So I want to look at Isaiah 45:5, and I want to respond to our brother. And it reads, Ani Yehovah we ein od, Zulati ein Elohim, we areka, we lo yadetani. Ani Yehovah, I am Yehovah. We ein od, and there is none else. Od, none. Ein, no, on, else. Zulati. That's the word. That's the word. This is the word that Brother DivineProspect says is where we may be having trouble as monotheists. And Brother DivineProspect says that he feels more I want to say, scholastically comfortable using the English word besides as opposed to the English word only, because of the preposition and because of the number of times of how Zulati is translated throughout the text, which if people are paying attention, Divine is showing you that panoramic lens method. It's not just one text that's telling you something. I hope people are respecting the methodology that we're both using. This is no lopsided argument. There's some powerful pieces coming from both sides that I hope the community could see. At the end of the day, the greatest thing that's being conveyed in this dialogue is that, guess what, family? We are powerhouse on both sides. Can you imagine if we came together, what we could solve? We have so much issues dealing with things in our community on our own. Could you imagine if we took the great minds and put them together? That's food for thought. Moving on, I do want to disagree with Brother Divine Prospect on the translation of Zulati, because I do not believe, until he shows it at another date, possibly when we sit down in person, the numerous times that it is translated the way in which he said it. But I will give you another translation. I want the family to look at Deuteronomy chapter 4 right now. Please open up to the book of Deuteronomy chapter 4. We're going to start at the 11th verse. I'm going to give the family time to get there. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 11. Now, mind you, I'm using a Stone Edition Tanakh or a Hebrew Tanakh. So if there's people out there that don't read Hebrew who may only be using the English translation, you're going to have to listen to what I'm about to say to know what verse I'm on. So again, I'm going to Deuteronomy chapter 4, and I want to start at verse 11. Because it is here that the Creator is describing what we call his incorporality. And by incorporality, we're speaking of the idea that the Creator is incorporeal, meaning that he cannot be seen, he cannot be grasped, he cannot be touched, he has no limbs, he has no arms. When the Torah uses this language, it is speaking anthropomorphically. It's using anthropomorphism, where we borrow terms from animals and nature in order to describe human phenomena. So when the book speaks about the Creator presenting the Torah from his right hand, it doesn't mean the Creator actually has a hand like man. We want people to understand that there are certainly some deep allegories within the text, because we understand that the Creator is incorporeal. And to me, I could be wrong, but to me, no other book and chapter other than Deuteronomy 4 drives this point more clearer than where we're going right now. So I want to start actually at verse 9, and I'll read it. Only take heed to yourself and keep your soul diligently, lest you forget the things which your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life. But teach them to your sons and to your grandsons, the day when you stood before the Lord your God in Horeb, when the Lord said to me, gather the people together, and I will make them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me all the days that they shall live upon the earth, and that they may teach their children. And you came near and stood under the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire to the heart of heaven, with thick darkness, cloud and thick darkness. And the Lord spoke to you from the midst of the fire. You heard the sound of words, but saw no form. You only heard a voice. Family, the word or phrase in Hebrew, you only heard a voice, is in Hebrew, Zulati Kol. Kol is how we say voice, Kuf Vav Lamed, and Zulati, Zion Wav Lamed Tav Yod, is how we say only. Now we just saw Isaiah 45 verse 5, where the Creator says, I am God, and there is no other God, as DivineProspect went on to say, as he translated Zulati as besides me. There's a couple of reasons why I think Divine's translation is problematic. So I'm going to open back Isaiah 45:5. But I want you to keep in mind, as we're here right now, let's translate Zulati the way that DivineProspect translates it. That way you can kind of understand what I'm trying to say here. If Zulati would be translated as besides, then the verse would read, but you saw no form, you beside heard a voice. Brother DivineProspect says that more times in the Tanakh, Zulati is translated as besides. So I don't want to belittle, ridicule, or sound like I'm making fun, so I will say this. Perhaps this is one of those few places where it means only. Nonetheless, I want you to understand that besides definitely don't fit here. So Zulati, as it is used here, definitely wouldn't mean besides. So the ultimate point I'm trying to make is to show you that not only does it not fit, but the word used here is Zulati, and it's only. Now I want to show and possibly prove to some of you why I believe only would be the same translation or the way we should translate Isaiah 45:5 as well. I'll give you something real quick in that passage of why only would also only make sense. I'll go it. Ani Yehovah we'ain od Zulati. I am Yehovah, and there is no one else, or there is no God besides me. Now, the way that we know to translate Zulati as only or none, no one else, is that very next word, very, very important, family, that comes after Zulati, which is ain, which means no. So it would make more sense for me to say there is no God or there is no other God than for me to say there is no God beside me. I'm already using the negative, no. So I would also jump in with the imperative and say it means no one else, not that it means besides me. So ultimately, I took you to at least one place in the Torah where Zulati is translated as beside me. I think what would help the dynamic for DivineProspect is that when we do comparative study and we say things like, you know what, I know that this word means this, but it's translated more times as this. That's not impossible. That's highly plausible. I do it myself. So again, Divine is not saying nothing crazy. He's using the scholarly method. You're supposed to go throughout the text. You're not supposed to look at one place and say, oh, that's what it means. No, you go throughout the text. So again, the brother's skilled in what he does. That's why I put respect on what he's doing. But what I would have rather him do was to go to at least 3 places. Because when we speak of more, we say 2 or 3 is more. Anything other than that we call less. So if there was more, he should have at least gave 2 or 3 examples to kind of open up room for the point to be somewhat valid. But what I did was I took you to Deuteronomy 4:12, where Zulati is saying, you have seen nothing. You only, or Zulati quo, you only heard a voice. With that being said, it's my opportunity to ask our brother DivineProspect a question. And it's 10:31. This is going to be my last question. I want to make this one countable, but I also don't want to make it too rocky because I want to save some room for this dynamic mind, man. I mean, this brother don't know how long I've been wanting to dialogue with him, because one thing about righteous dialogue is that we become edified and we grow. I could tell the family that, when I came in the Kemetic community, I was beat up for certain methodologies. I was beat up for certain things, but that was 3 years ago. Everyone knows by now I've grown exponentially. Family, it's okay to get beat up on in a dialogue. Not saying that either one of us is getting beat up in this dialogue, but if we were, I would love it. I would love for Divine to beat me up in this dialogue, and I mean in a brotherly way, because it's going to make me sharp, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. And that's what I enjoy most about this brother, because he's not afraid of becoming sharp. Remember, In order for a knife to become sharp, it got to lose something. When you sharpen a knife, you know that it's losing pieces. So in order to become edified, you got to get rid of something. Hallelujah. Divine Prospect. Isaiah 45, verse 6. Translate for me, brother Divine Prospect, the very next verse. I tried to make it as easy as possible for you so as to even stay in the same chapter in the same book. Translate to me, what does Bil Adai mean? Translate that for me. Translate what is being translated as beside me. What does that mean? I want you to read the whole verse, Isaiah 45, verse 6, and then I want you to translate that for me. And I want you to tell me what it means. Hallelujah.
Okay, excellent. All right. So to preface what I'm about to say before I translate for the brother, I want to thank Zion for giving that final explanation as well as asking his final question. I did want to point out to him, if I had the time, the grammatical rules that will allow us to see what's a preposition and what is a conjunction in regards to the word zulati. As you can see, what we're looking at, it's not translated as only or except, because they see it as a preposition. When we go to Deuteronomy 4:12, it serves as a conjunction. And you can see this based on what precedes and succeeds the word itself. All right, so I just wanted to point that out, and me and him can dialogue about the grammatical aspects at another time. Man, the brother gave a great explanation, right? Even if I disagree with him, I got to be like, man, that was pretty good. It's pretty good. I got some things to look at and consider. So he goes to Isaiah chapter 45 and verse 6, and he asks me a very interesting question, because we see in English there's a word there that says beside, right? I will say that that word beside there is, I wouldn't say it's the best translation, but I'll read it like he says, and then I'll interpret it. All right. So we have le ma'an yedeu mim misra semes umim ma'araba ki epes bil ada ani Yahuwah we'ain od. So we have a situation where now we have him emphasizing what he was saying in verse 5. So verse 5 has already laid the foundation. And what we tend to see in Hebrew prose is that whenever the Most High, Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, is actually speaking, he likes to emphasize points, especially if it's something that is very, very important. And we'll even see the words we'en, od there as well, that's used in the previous verse. So ki is the word for, conjunction meaning for. It pesh, there is none or without, or let's say, I would say nevertheless, or less than something. You know what I'm saying? You actually, pretty much what you're doing is you're saying that anything else is below or it's worthless or something along those lines. All right. So any entity that is beside him, if we go back to ki ipesh, which is it's worthless. It's nothing. All right. Because that word that we're looking at, ipesh, is a noun. All right. And the bil adai is the adjective. All right. So I would translate bil adai as, I would say, like nothing else it has worth or value without Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. So nothing else would matter to the nation of Israel if Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh is not involved, because he's letting you know that I am Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh and there's nothing else like him. Remember the audience and who he's speaking to, what he's comparing himself to, because his covenantal people have whored away and now they're in captivity. So he's letting them know that from the setting of the sun and the rising of the sun, from the east to the west and all these things, that the world is going to know who I am and whose people you are. And that's very important. So now he goes on to emphasize what he said in verse 5. And that emphasis is very, very important, because he's letting you know that without him, or without his existence, anything else, nothing else matters to the children of Israel without Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. It doesn't matter what entity they're serving, what king that they're under. Nothing else matters except him. So for them to go after other deities, not having a covenant with them, and then now subjecting themselves to captivity, he is emphasizing who he is to them. And he's emphasizing you cannot compare nobody next to me. There's nothing else without me that you guys can say is sustaining you, because I am Yod-Heh-Vah-Weh, the self-existent one, and that will continue to exist. And there is none else. Nothing can compare to Yod-Heh-Vah-Weh. Again, this is not saying that no other lesser deities exist. He's not telling Israel, oh, no other gods exist. He's letting them know, I am the supreme preeminent one amongst you guys, nothing else. And Biladai is the objective there. Keep that in mind. Epes is the noun. The objective is only helping to emphasize what the noun is saying. And then we have a pronoun ani, and then the noun Yod-Heh-Wah-Weh, and then we have other parts or other articles as we proceed forward. So this is supposed to be read as a unit. Ki Epes Biladai ani Yahweh. And then it continues with and none else, because you'll see if you read it in the actual transcription of the scroll, there's a dividing marker, because you have to read that as a whole and then proceed with the rest of the text. That's very important. It has to be read together. The adjective has to line up with the noun, and then we have a pronoun that has to point to the noun. And we start off with a conjunction, getting us to understand that all these things are interrelated when we look at it from a mechanical, grammatical perspective. So again, this does not nullify henotheism. It does not, I mean, people use it as a monotheistic proof text, because in their mind, oh, it says that there's only one power, but no, there's only one Yod-Heh-Wah-Weh. This is what he's emphasizing here in verse 6. Verse 5 is a little bit more information, because we have a root for El or Elohe or Elohim, but now he's emphasizing when it comes to me, nothing else matters. Everything else is worthless. This could be nothing that can be prepared to me, that can be contrasted with me, that can be brought before me, that has any worth, that has any value. It is only me. The children of Israel can't say no other entity has done anything for them like Yod-Heh-Wah-Weh has done.
Could I jump in, Divine?
I didn't hear you.
Hello?
What you said?
Could I jump in?
Sure. I mean,
if you were finished.
no. I was done. I was just waiting for yeah, go ahead.
Okay. To cue us up. All right. Thank you very much. Again, family, again. You know, if this was a song that said it, he'd say, all right, stop with the buddy. We need some blood now. You know, and I thank the creator. This is not a sonnet. Because if there's any blood drawn here, it's to say that this is my blood brother. And if there's any blood drawn here, it's to give to my brother if he needs blood. You understand? This is real love, family. We are simply just disagreeing. There's no hate here. I can't help but stress that tonight. So there's also a reason why I came to Isaiah 45, verse 6. Because in yesterday's live stream, as well as when Divine was with our friendly lawyer, our brother Brian Gaither, he said Isaiah 45, verse 5 is not talking about there's no other gods. It's just saying there's no other Yehovah, Yod-Heh-Vah-Weh. There's no other like him. So aside from all of the other problematic parts of what he said, I said to myself, a really good researcher does this. We say, let's play devil's advocate. Let's say he's right. This is how we approach a lot of truth, you know. When you give people the benefit of the doubt and then you move on, sometimes you learn something new or greater. I said, you know what? Playing devil's advocate. Divine is right. Let's say Isaiah 45, verse 5 is talking about there's no other Yehovah. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm wrong to think that it's trying to say there's no other God besides him. Maybe Divine is right in saying there's no other Yod Hey Vav Hey. Maybe he's right. Then I looked at the next verse. And the next verse is saying, Ani Yehovah, we ain't owed. Besides me, there's no other Yehovah. So I have a question. Is he saying this twice back to back? Or is he talking about two different things? Because in Isaiah 45:5, he's telling you there's no other gods. But in case you're not clear on what the Creator meant, and you may have thought, oh, okay, there's no other gods, but maybe there's another Yehovah. Verse 6 comes and he also says, and guess what? There's no other Yehovah. He's not saying the same thing twice, family. He's saying two different things. That's why we see Elohim, Ein Elohim, in verse 5. And that's why we see Ani Yehovah, Ein Od. There is no other Yehovah in verse 6. I don't even want to drag the point out. I want to say hallelujah. I really, really thoroughly enjoyed tonight's dissertation. I think that we started at 7:45 when Divine came on. I was on since 7. So we've now been on 3 hours, going towards the 4-hour marker in another half hour or so. And I want to say that, listen, family, it's not easy to speak for 3 hours with this kind of level of scholarship. It drains you. It's not easy. You know, me and Divine would proudly say, yeah, we could do this for another 3 hours. But listen, it's Shabbat. You know what I mean? And we also want to save some for the community. So I want to ask Brother DivineProspect to close the show with his own words, however he so chooses to do so. And I even asked the brother to share his opinion on how he believes this dialogue went tonight.
Okay, no problem, my brother. Chief Uzziel, do I have your permission to proceed?
Absolutely, my brother. Go ahead.
All right, thank you for that. Yeah, I had to cancel some stuff because this actually went on longer than I expected. But like Zion said, I could go another 3 hours. You know, I believe me and him was locked in the room, and somebody left us in there at 5 p.m. They come back the next day, we still be talking. You know what I'm saying? Like, we would not be sleeping, because that would be the second thing on our mind. The primary thing is the build. I've learned a lot from the brother tonight. There's still some things I disagree on, and that's fine, because that type of friction is healthy, and that's what helped you grow. And the brother Zion is definitely somebody that is well respected in the community. He has put in a lot of work, whether people like his work or not, or agree with it or not. The brother, you know, he's an author, so we got to give him credit for that. The brother also is fearless when it comes to standing up against opposition. And I respect that heart from him. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, nobody can ever take that away from him. The brother was able to follow this dialogue with me. I believe if we have more time, we'd be able to go back and forth a little bit more than what happened here. But the fact that the brother was able to hold his own and keep going back to back with me lets me know that if I was to choose almost anybody to actually have a dialogue with, you know what I'm saying, that I know that can hold a dialogue with me for a long time, I would have to choose my brother as one of those individuals. I mean, I love the brotherly love. Even though we may disagree vehemently on things, and never leads to ad hominems, and never leads to disrespect, and never leads like, oh, nigga, I'm going to see you outside, excuse my French. You know what I'm saying? Or when I see you, it's on. It's nothing like that. I didn't have to call him any names. I didn't have to degrade his work. I didn't have to say anything about his family or himself in order to get my point across. And I got to tell people all the time, if you believe that you stand on truth, then all you need to do is be that puppet and allow the ventriloquist to speak through you. Truth doesn't need you to fight its battles. Truth just needs you to stand and speak. And what you say, the Ruach will lead. And because me and my brother have the same correlating Ruach in us, we both can stand here and say, listen, we had a great dialogue. The brother came with his, I came with mine. It wasn't even an official debate. I mean, this is really a dialogue. Y'all ain't see no debate. You know what I'm saying? But we just want to show people and set the precedent to let you know that you can vehemently disagree with your brother in the truth, or if your sisters with your sister in truth, and still maintain your poise, still be respectful, and still be able to convey what is in your leb, your heart, without being disgruntled, bitter, or angry. And I think this was a great explanatory demonstration of this. And I thank the brother Zion Lexx and you, Chief Uzziel, for being fair, for inviting me on your platform. I agreed to the terms and conditions when I got on, and it was your protocol. But I can't say that nobody double teamed me, nobody ambushed me. None of that happened. So this is, again, another precedent that we have to take note of to say, going forward, what type of dialogues are we having in our community? And we have to respect people who come to the forefront to say, hey, look, even though I may not agree with the brother saying, even though I may say, hey, look, he's not looking at this right, or, you know, I don't know where he got that from. At least we can say I've opened my ear to hear the matter before I came to a conclusion. And that is strictly Torah. So I thank you, Chief Uzziel. Thank you, my brother Zion Lexx. And I look forward to coming onto this platform again, having dialogues about other subject matters as well. And I thank the Most High Yah for allowing us to be peaceful on a Shabbat. And I pray that this glorifies and honors El Elyon. Shabbat Shalom.
Hallelujah. Just before Chief Uzziel says something, I want to close too. I want to thank Brother DivineProspect for coming on the show. I said to Brother DivineProspect, I can understand if in times past, if I asked you to have a sit down or a dialogue, you may have been a bit hesitant, because I don't think my past actions were the best, especially mindful of how a lot of people have viewed me. I think that I took enough time to win the brother's respect and allow the brother to say, you know what, let me give it an opportunity. And I think tonight we both prove that this is the new precedent, man. I think that when we have people in our community that say that they're going to get together to have a dialogue and difference of opinion, and you see and know that that dialogue is not fruitful, as we say in the world of scripture, it's not for the sake of heaven, then family, don't even watch that. Don't even tune into that YouTube video. It's 2018. Let's not give that any energy whatsoever. 5778 on the Hebrew calendar, for those who follow this calendar, the Hebrew calendar. Let's not give that no energy, family. It's a whole new year. And I think that we're opening the year quite literally by trying to show the family how we should be doing this. And to DivineProspect, brother, I want to let you know that not only do I learn from you when I hear you speak, but I also learned from you tonight. There were things that you said tonight that I actually wrote down. I have a pen and pad open. And I want to say that in the hearing of the people, I have a great deal of respect for you. And one thing I want to say is this: people, be mindful of who you stand in front of. If you are standing in front of someone you don't even have respect for, you shouldn't be having a dialogue with them. That's always going to turn out bad. I want to say, look at my track record if you don't believe me. Hallelujah. I turned it over to my brother Chief Uzziel.
Toda Rabah to all of the people on the panel, all the panelists. I seriously didn't think that we were going to go for almost 4 hours. We're almost on the 4th hour. I'd like to thank the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Yehovah, Elohim, Yehovah our God, for this dialogue and for showing me and showing us that even though we come from two schools of understanding, different understanding, that we could still come on this platform and have a dialogue and still come out as brothers, still come out as sisters. We still got some people on the chat that, you know, some of you didn't get the spirit of the dialogue, but I'm glad that the people on the panel showed what it was that we try to convey through this dialogue, which was brotherhood. We agreed to disagree, but we respect each other, and from there we build. I'm one to agree that agrees that we don't need to have these dialogues on other platforms where they show us gouging each other, because that's just exactly what they want to see. If we want to have these platforms, we can have our own indoor debates. We can have dialogue like this in order for people to see that we are brothers and sisters and that we get along. So I thank all of you once again. I hope that the Most High God bless and keep each and every one of you. My brother, what's your name? Shalar? What's the brother's name?
Shaya.
So yeah, thank you for coming on. Also, I know you only have one thing to say, but do you want to give a closing statement before we?
Yeah, Chief. You know, to the Rabbi for Brother DivineProspect, Zion Lexx. You know, definitely it's a blessing. Just sitting and observing and listening, hearing the brother give his point across where he's coming from. You know, definitely it's a blessing to me. I've been trying to reach out to the brother for the last couple of months, and so to listen to the brother and maybe we can you know, again, edify our nation, you know, because he got some points, my Prospect got some points, and so we can all come together and add to the pot to make our community more stronger. Everybody got something they can add. And we don't want to continue to shun one another, whether that brother or sister disagree or not. We need to come together, having dialogue, so our community can see leaders come together. You see what I'm saying? And so it was a blessing to the Rabbi for all of you brothers. And may the Most High Barak y'all and y'all mishmakars. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. And I'd like to thank my son Maozia for staying up here with me and toughing it out, helping me out with the everybody on the stream. Please don't forget to subscribe, to like the video, to share it. I mean, I think this is going to be one of those that everybody's going to be sharing anyway, because once the other part of the community here that Zion and Divine was together and they was, you know, they're going to call this a debate. They were going back and forth. Everybody's going to be excited about it, and they're going to try to come and see if there was fireworks. And the blessing in it is that after whatever differences we had, we still came out brothers. So thank all of you once again. I'd like to thank the Most High once again for this thing. Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe on both on my Uzziel of channel and on my and on the DCB channel. It's been a blessing. Toda Abba brothers. May the Most High God bless y'all. May y'all have a good night's sleep. And may your Shabbat day tomorrow be a blessing. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.